Well then, good evening, ladies and gentlemen across the world. Welcome aboard and welcome back to WOR. This is the Legacy Division. It should be an absolute cracker here as we return after our week break for our second stint on this calendar. Welcome to the Mexico City Grand Prix. It is myself, Jota, alongside not Joseph once again, who's decided to take his cavalry all the way over to Leicester for their Grand Prix, their match here tonight. So I've none of the Godbobbers alongside me again for this one, so we should be in for an absolute cracker. We'll take a quick look at the standings as we get into this one here, Bobbers, because it's been, well, let's be candid, a little bit of a show for ET8 last time out. They really could not get their rhythm in last time out and at the Qatari Grand Prix, and that has just extended the lead in the championship for SCI.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you all for joining us here for what is round 6 of the season. But yes, and it all kicked off with that very questionable call in qualifying. Sergio retiring in Q1 in P10 nonetheless, and well, it didn't pay off in the end, and he got pipped and was started P6. Well, what eventually would have been P15 due to a grid penalty for another driver. But yes, it was a topsy-turvy race for ET8, and SCI took full advantage, getting that double podium, and taking the win nonetheless. So they, after losing out the previous week, they re-extended that championship gap, and it definitely shows now that 65-point gap. I mean, ET8 have closed that down before. There's nothing to say they can't do it again, but they certainly shot themselves in the foot last week.
Yeah, certainly, because here are the results then. Of course, it was a double podium for SCI with Oscar and Volakongan leading the way in the Mercedes outfits. And then Ivan Eskrig, the first podium ceremony for AMR Esports, who had an absolute blinder of a race, did Ivan, and he'd absolutely deserved of his win, and only 2 seconds back from Oscar in the end. But then, as you can see, when you take a look at ET8, the highest place driver was Mario in the end, just a bit below, 5 seconds behind the race victor in 5th place. Sergio can only get 11th in the end, of course, after that poor qualifying. And ET8 just lost their mojo a little bit, and it's just cementing what is unfortunately a situation here for ETA. This is very much a championship Achilles heel for the Spanish outfit. They want to try and win it at some point, but if they want to be champions, they can't let points go like that.
No, they certainly can't, and you explained this very well last week with the fact that with the strategy aspect they did, and the fact they just keep bottling it slightly in these, very high-end tier championships, and like Legacy Division being one nonetheless. As we've had some interesting disqualifications from the session. That's a new one, unless it's drivers that have got a qualifying ban, which I think it is actually. There's 2 teams actually, yes, that's right, with their qualifying bans here tonight. So they will be starting P17, 18, and 19th and 20th nonetheless. And I believe that is for I know QRT are one of them. The second one, I do apologise, I cannot remember. So really, there's only one driver that's going to go out here in Q1. But yes, back to ET8. They've got to learn from their mistake last week. I mentioned, 2 weeks ago, I mentioned it then, and I'll say it again now. They can't make that same mistake again. It's bad enough doing it once, but doing it twice over the course of a 15-race season, and with the sprints as well, you can't do that. You can't do it in a high-end tier and high-end league like this. So hopefully they learn from their mistakes. They can bounce back here tonight, but that's down to them. It's down to their engineers and the drivers nonetheless. But they've got a big task ahead of them. I mean, they're just lucky the fact that there's, plenty of races at least to try and, close that gap once again.
Yeah, so this is the situation then in terms of the grid. I think you were lightly mentioning about the qualifying bans. QRT and EVR are both serving qualifying bans. Both of their teams, unfortunately, fielded their drivers too late. Despite the fact there was a week gap, they couldn't get him in time. So both of their drivers have to serve qualifying bans at the Kicksauber and the Williams outfit, which is a bit of a shame for QRT as well, because poor Tens is starting his first race in Legacy Division as well. He's actually extremely excited. We saw it posted on Twitter, actually, how excited he was about this one. But he'll be starting his first race at the back of the grid. In terms of the rest of the drivers, though, Dan and Quantum racing in the McLaren outfit at FRT. Ferrari's RSC is Lucas and Mathis, and then you've got Gavroche and Thomas at Ventauri. Then you've got the championship leaders Oscar and Tony tonight with Lorenz and Evil at Hadrick Racing, Sergio and Azim for ET8, Thomas and Leon at IRT, Ivan Eskrig and Maxim for AMR tonight. So that is the situation in terms of what we've got coming up anyway in this particular race. Here we have qualifying then, and no lap times to be sort of heard of at the moment, as of course everyone's still sort of doing their interruns, but a bit of a week break now with this one, Bobbert. So, you know, what's the opportunity for the drivers out there now? They've had that week break. It's a little bit of a refresher, but this particular circuit does offer a fresh challenge, especially if you're a bit rusty after a week away.
I mean, Mexico throws up its own challenges and completely different challenges to what Qatar did 2 weeks ago. I mean, yes, you do have the tight, twisty nature of the first sector in the first three corners, and again the beginning of the middle sector. But you've then got the high-speed S section through sector 2 into the end and to the start of sector 3 before getting to the stadium section. Yeah, again, this track just throws a new ball game for all these drivers here. So it'll be interesting to see. Well, the other thing as well, actually, before I continue, is track extending and corner cutting around here is definitely a big thing and something to keep an eye on during the race, and especially actually saying that as well for qualifying for invalidations. But yes, obviously with the fact that 4 drivers will not be qualifying here tonight, it is just going to be the one sole driver who's going to lose out here in Q1. As to who that's going to be, well, we'll see in the next 13 minutes that we have left in this session. Obviously we've got 3 intermediate times on the board at the moment, but obviously we'll be waiting the next sort of 5 minutes before we get the first real lap times on the board. But I tell you what, I couldn't call it as to who that one person could be, but I will say one thing is I would like to again congratulate Ivan, obviously getting his podium 2 weeks ago, and I think again he'll be certainly one to keep an eye out for again tonight. I don't see why not.
Yeah, completely different circuit though is the Autodromo Hermano Rodriguez, because this particular circuit is one of completely differentiated to Qatar. It's a free-flowing, sweeping circuit is Qatar. This one more known for its long straights, of course, which have only got really 90-degree corners implemented pretty much across it, apart from those set of S's in the second and third sectors. So he's going to be one to watch. Then he's even Eskrid, quantum fastest of those on the inter-runners. We're following Thomas Covers at the moment. Another driver has actually got a little bit of pace behind him, but fielded at the team currently down in the midfield of the standings here in IRT. Here he comes then through the first sector, checking the car through the left and the right-hander. You'll see that the car obviously is not going to be at its particular finest, of course, with these Inter tyres on there. But we do have one person who's elected to just skip the entire process of using the intermediate tyres, and it's Tony Reish. That's the SCI man coming across the final corner, and he's about to start a lap on the soft tyres. And who's going to take it with you? Bobberts is going to give us a little guide around the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez.
17 corners here around this obviously this Mexico City circuit. Down the pit straight now, using all that battery. Do we hit 210 miles an hour? Not quite, saving about half the battery throughout the rest of the lap as we get on the brakes into turn 1. 4th gear, but downshift in the third. The car clearly not turning in as early as these soft tyres would like to do. Through turns 2 and 3, back on the power once again. DRS activated as we come down this next little mini straight to the end of the first sector. It's a 27.9 here for Tony. Obviously, we're expecting times to be much quicker as we get towards the end of the session. Through this complex of 90-degree corners here, through the double right kink here, which I think is actually a nice little section of corners. Actually, it's classed as 1 corner, but really it's classed as 2. Through the S section now, through 7, here through 8, turn 9, and then what would be turns 10 and 11. The corners just coming thick and fast as you get the speed back up, back on the power again. The third DRS zone now activated as we enter the middle sector now and into the stadium section, where obviously, when Checo Perez was racing, obviously the crowd were going absolutely jubilant and wild for the Mexican driver. But through we go now, just 2 more corners to go for Tony. You want to take a bit of curb on that inside, but avoid it a little bit on the outside. Cut to the right hand side to shorten the entry and the exit to the start-finish straight. And it's a 14.2 to get our first competitive-ish lap time on the board. I do expect Tony to go much quicker than that, but it's certainly a time for the rest of the drivers at least to aim for in these final 10 minutes.
Yeah, you can certainly see that the first turn, actually, even for Tony Reish in that situation, is just, well, he wasn't really powering the car through these particular corners. So a little bit more of a banker lap from the SCI man. No pressure, no when, no want, no worry. Plenty of other people, though, still electing to use the intermediate tyres. One of those actually Gav Roche. That's the Ventauri man. He's just now coming across the final corner as he now comes across the line, goes second fastest of everyone with a 1:18.853, but of course on the intermediate tyre, not really that competitive out there. But we do have other laps now starting to come in. We've got out laps just starting now on the soft tyres. One of those AMR Maxime, his teammate Ivan Eskrig, currently in P5 with an intermediate lap 1:19.4, and of course Ivan, a lot of learnings to take from the last race, because of course he had the pace at Qatar, but it's a completely different circuit, is the Autodromo Hermano Rodriguez. So, you know, what happens for, you know, Ivan Eskrig here? Does he, you know, what learnings does he take from Qatar to a completely different circuit like this?
I think the main thing for him really is to take the confidence that he built up, to show that obviously that he, and you know, again, what is a completely different circuit, just use that confidence, use that building, those building blocks, and to take it into here. And I don't see it as, it shouldn't be an issue for him. But then again, I've eaten my words before. I could eat them again, as ET8 obviously found themselves last week. Obviously, he's got a different teammate with him, with Maxime tonight, who's just about to start his latest flying lap now. Did a 19.5 on the inters. I believe he was the second driver to complete a lap time on the intermediates, and he will be the second driver to complete a lap on the softs, as Tony has already decided, though, a 14.2 is quick enough to get into Q2. I mean, he's obviously currently P1 at the moment. He's, well, let's wait and see, I guess, is all I'm going to say. At least he doesn't have to worry about, you know, 4 other drivers to try and get, you know, to have to worry about. It's only going to be, well, one driver, I guess, really, who, if he does drop down to P15, but we'll wait and see as to whether or not that's going to work out for him.
Yeah, quite a quick reminder, of course, Kevin Zunberg and Olix at EVR alongside Monza and Portend, they're all not able to qualify in this one as well. We've got QRT have got to start at the back. That's the reason why they've got a DSQ to their name, whilst the other EVR drivers are going to be respective places for them will be 17th and 18th place. The 16th place is the only spot for someone to be knocked out, and of course it could be anyone. Remember, ET8 lost a driver in 16th place in Q1 last time out, so don't think that it might just be someone from the midfield that's just going to lose their spot, because especially with how closely competitive it is out there, only hundredths of a second could be the difference between you being in and being out. Here comes Maxime across the line, I'm at 14.6, a little way down on Tony Risha's time by around about 0.4 of a second, so he'll be looking over his shoulder. Here's Quantum. That's the FRT man looking to set a respective lap time as well. Will he get anywhere near Tony Risha's lap time? No, he won't. He's down as well with a 14.7. So clearly not comfortable out there at the moment. IRT are showing some pace here with Leon. And then Azim coming across the line, 14.3, taking their learnings, ET8, after that poor qualifying last time out. Here's Sergio, the recipient of the Q1 knockout last time out, of course, in Qatar a couple of weeks ago. Plenty of learnings to be had on this one as he chucks the car through the right-hander, and he'll be hoping to get somewhere nowhere near where he currently sits in 16th. P6, 14.629, but immediately knocked to P7 because we've just had Oscar from SCI come across the line, and look at Lucas flying for RSC. They'll be happy with that one as well. The former EVE man happy with his lap time of a 14.286, but RSC have got one driver through by the looks of things. Will it be another one, though, because Matthias is down at the back? Remember, he hasn't set a lap time, but he just has now with a 6th place 14.3. Ventauris Thomas coming across the line, 14.5. Still lap times to come as well from people on laps. One of those, Lorenz at the moment. That's the HR man. He's invalidated his lap, so he's still with his intermediate lap of 1:19.5, and presently will be the person knocked out of qualifying.
Indeed, and that certainly would be a little bit of a shocker. Not just him as well, but even Eskrig there did not set a lap time himself. But yeah, Lorenz did invalidate his lap time. He finished the lap to, I presume, get an idea as to what it would have been, but it was only good enough, I think, for P10 at the time. But I take my words back what I said about Tony, and clearly, obviously, that 14.220 is certainly quick enough, but there's still plenty of time, and obviously a lot of these drivers will want to go back out again and get lap time on the board as Thomas comes around the final couple of corners and just goes ahead of his teammate to P7. So a decent lap there. The two house drivers now in P7 and PA. But I'll tell you one thing that is standing out to me at the moment is the fact that you've got the likes of Gavroche and Quantum and Yasia, and well, obviously, and even Eskrig, down towards the bottom end of the standings at the moment. Certainly something I did not expect. We've still got 5 minutes to go, but they've only got one more chance now to get themselves through. And I know it's only going to be for one spot they're battling with, but a big name could still certainly lose out here.
Yeah, Lawrence Sill is currently at the bottom then with the intermediate lap time, as is even Eskrig in P15. Gavroche with an 18.8. He will not be happy at the moment with his intermediate lap time either, but as it stands, they're both through. But still plenty of lap time to find, of course, when they get onto the correct compound. So track clearly a bit green at the moment, to be honest with you, as the track will continue to evolve. We'll start to see the lap times tumble. As it stands, though, SCI have got one man through, and Tony Reich extremely comfortable, as is FRT Dan. He retires out with his 14.2 as well. Lucas is 0.003 of a second in front of Dan, so we should expect shortly a retirement for the RSC man as well to move on to Q2. Gav Roche, on the other hand, I'm not sure if he's on a lap or not. We'll see his Sector 1 split imminently here at the end of this straight. Is he on a lap or is he not? I don't think he's on a lap at the moment. No,
he completed his lap to do that 14.3.
So 14.
I was just on board with him, so
yeah, 14.3 is not too bad as well. 4,000s faster than Azim on that particular one, so he is currently just returning now on his in lap. But no surprises in this one. HR have seen Lorenz pull into the pit box. They put a set of softs in and kicked him straight back out again.
Indeed, obviously they're not going to take any chances here. They're not going to do an ETA. I'm not going to call. Well, I did just call it an ETA. Actually, I'm afraid to say, and they're not going to take that chance. It'd be an interesting thing now as to what maybe the guys in the 0.3s are going to do. Do they think that they're safe enough with that sort of lap time? I mean, you certainly expect the likes of Quantum and Sergio to find a good 3 to 4 tenths and trouble those. But Thomas in P10 has retired, so that means that all the drivers in front of him should retire. Well, they're now safe. They don't need to worry about going back out again. So we're going to have 11th through to 16th back out on track. 6 drivers fighting for that final place, but Thomas could be the loser out of this, and he's jumped the gun thinking that is good enough. But it happened last week with Sergio in P10, and he dropped out. Could we have it twice in a row? But for VNT this week, we'll have to wait and see as Lorenz comes around the final corners now, goes as wide as he possibly can to get that as much top speed as he can to start his final attempt.
Now this is it here, because if Lorenz gets anywhere near the 14.2s, then I certainly think Thomas is going to be certainly looking over his shoulder here, because I expect Quantum certainly is going to have more pace. Yasia should have more pace as well. Even Eskrig and Lorenz still haven't actually set a dry compound lap yet, so they will almost certainly improve as well. So I'm not entirely sure Thomas is 100% safe here, but we'll see. Here he comes then, Lorenz, obviously finding just under a second in the first sector alone here now on the dry tyre. I think it's going to be a bit more on the conservative approach here for Lorenz after end up making that mistake. He'll be on a fresh set of boots, and HR will have said, get the hell out of here and actually set a lap for us here, son, because at this point in time you're at risk. Here he comes then through the right-hander, through the left-hander, and then you'll power your way into the stadium section. Sector 2 split coming up now. He's found about 3.5 seconds, chucks the car through the right-hander, very well taken up on that curb as well. Very happy to take the curb. The car doesn't look too upset either over those curbs. Here he comes then through this right-hander. You want to get the power down as early as you possibly can, except that there may be some oversteer, but very well handled. Here comes Lorenz right now, 14.448. I think Thomas will be a little bit more comfortable knowing that it's not going to be in the 14.2s, because other people may struggle. Here's Ivan Eskrig. Here he comes across the line. It's a 14.3 for him. Thomas now down to 12th place in this one. We've got other laps coming in as well. Yasia has found 0.3 of a second in the second sector. Chucks the car through the left-hander, through the right-hander. He gets up on the curb, but the car did not like that at all. Bottom out over the sausage curb. Here he comes then across the final corner to set his lap time as it goes P11 with a 14.5, and Thomas now down to P13. Quantum looking to improve. He's only found about a 10.5 actually in the second sector, so he's really pushing his luck here, is the FRT man. Currently will be knocked out of qualifying as it stands, but his lap time's not looking fairly sharp. Here he comes across the line. It's only a 14.4 as well, but Thomas now down to P14 as a result of this one. Sergio is now on the brink and in very familiar territory for ETA. At least now they've sent their man out.
Indeed, so at this rate, it's Maxime versus Sergioli here. Well, obviously, and Thomas as well. Maxime actually invalidated towards the end of his lap and only started with 60% battery. So Maxime actually could be the one who could lose out here, simply down to not having enough battery to go again. But he is ahead of Sergio out on track, so let's see. Let's see what he can do coming through the middle sector. But look at that, he's already used all of his battery near enough, and he's not going to have it for that final sprint. And down here as well, as we come to the start of the final sector, he's 3/10 down near enough. So I think Maxime is pretty much done. Lorenz obviously comfortable and is in through to P9. Maxime is invalidated into the stadium section. He is done. Thomas is now safe and he is through. It's all down to Sergio at his final attempt. What can he do? He's simply got to find 4/1000ths of a second to get himself through to Q2 and not make it 2 Q1 eliminations in a row. Final two corners, here for Sergio, for ETA to save their qualifying. Where's it going to be? It's P9, and he makes it through comfortably by just 0.2 of a second in the end to Maxime, who invalidated on his previous attempt, and it's cost him big style, and it is Maxime who loses out.
Well, top 5 teams, completely different team. Excuse me. Across the board. So they are, again, just a real bit of a mix between all of the people in the Legacy division. But Sergio learning from the mistakes of the last time in Qatar, down in P16 at the end of Q1, but then comes across the line, puts himself P9. But that may be good for ETA, both drivers now through, but with all of the drivers now ready to potentially be knocked out in Q2, a 1:14.4 and 9th place overall, I'd be a bit worried about that overall pace. Maybe ETA have got a bit more in the locker heading into Q2. But so far, top of the table for the team top of the table, with Tony Riesch with that 14.220 set very early on in Q1. It turns out to be a really good lap indeed from Tony. Lucas with a 14.286, and Dan a little bit down the order on that one as well in the 14.2s. So a real testament to all of the drivers out on the field to see how close it is out there. You'll get to see right now. Look on the right-hand side, you've actually got less than a quarter of a second separating the top 10. Tony Riesch leading the way from Lucas, from Dan, Gavroche, Nazim, Oscar from Ivan Eskrig. Then you've got Matthias Guillet. Then you've got Sergio, Lorenz Silk. You've got Quantum, Thomas Covers, Yassir, and then Leon in P14. The last person to get through, Ventauris Thomas, who did retire down in P10. He'll be thanking his lucky stars that Maxime invalidated and got all of his strategy wrong, because otherwise he'd have been knocked out. Maxime is out, and of course you've got those that were serving qualifying bans: Kevin, Olix, Monza, and then Poras as well. So that is going to be pretty good for them. Let's give us a quick reminder as they head into Q2 of last week's results here in this one, because of course ETA, they just absolutely bottled their qualifying, and it really messed up their chances in the race, and you can see the reflection of that one in 5th and 11th. Now, if we're perfectly candid, 4th and 9th in end of Q1 doesn't really put a bit of confidence in the team second place in the championship either.
No, definitely, yeah, you're right on that one. I mean, Azim was actually fairly comfortable, I think, on his lap. A low 0.3, so he was fairly comfortable with his lap time. But yeah, Sergio, once again, like last week, struggling in qualifying. At least he's made it through out of Q1 this time, and obviously through to Q2, so learning from their mistakes. But yeah, maybe he just held back a little bit, just wanted to make sure that he got a clean lap time on the board, and obviously just as long as it was just about quick enough, which it was in the end, to get himself through. So there's certainly, hopefully for his sake, and obviously for ETA's sake, there's more in the tank there. But Tony out in front, setting their lap time very early on, and well, in the end it turned out that I ate my own words, and it was certainly more than quick enough, so it shows that I know nothing about my team or my teammate for that respect. But nonetheless, it's fairly comfortable there for SCI to get through, and for obviously everybody else near enough, apart from Thomas, who I think can count his lucky stars that Maxime messed up his attempt, and it's him who is the non-beneficiary, as it were, in this case, and Thomas gets through with his teammate of Gavroche. But as we get into Q2, all the drivers pretty much coming out onto track straight away. Obviously, some of them will be going out on scrub sets, especially those who had to do a second run at the end of Q1 there. Some could be on brand new tyres. We'll see that with the lap times and the differences. But, Jota, it's an interesting one. I mean, on retiring, and we saw it with ET last week, and VNT again taking that chance. I mean, I don't understand why you do that. Why not just go out again just to make sure?
Well, if you want to keep a set of tyres so you've got the advantage, then maybe that would be the reason why. They thought they were comfortable, but they definitely were pulling at the collars of their shirts, if you will, when they started seeing those times coming in. But thankfully, there was a mistake from one of the other drivers, which allowed them just to sneak through. And at the end of the day, it's an even split, isn't it, Formula One? The 33% of it is about raw pace, 33% of it is about your team. The other 33% or 34%, or however you want to split it anyway, is luck. And it's just for Venturi on that particular point, luck fell in their favour, but they'll be taking those learnings not to do that one again. Anyway, first person to be setting a lap will be one of the IRTs, I believe. I believe it would be Leon. He'll be the first person to set a lap on this occasion, chucking the car through this left-hander. And, of course, this is the first time in this game cycle that we're also witnessing the old livery of the Haas. That is obviously the inspired livery from the 2016 season. So this is a nice little livery that we're going to be seeing now for a few weeks, I believe, in this particular game cycle. So a gorgeous one, to say the least. Chucking the car through the right and then the left-hander once again. Leon just wanting to set, I think, an early precedenter. We'll see what his second sectors, a 55.8. Pace not quite there, I don't think, but not too bad for the Haas Ferrari. Chucking the car through the left-hander, through the right one, and then into the right-hander of the final couple of corners, where the car will be looking to set an early precedent setter of a 1 minute 15.0. There's definitely a bit more pace to find in Leon. Tony Reish coming across the line, the man P1 at the end of Q1, 14.6, probably a scrub set for him as well. Sergio comes across the line with a 14.7.
That's more like it from Sergio there, and there goes the seam as well, improving by just over a tenth of a second. Something that you might have missed there, Jota, which I just about caught on camera, was Lorenz and Dan going through the final two corners together to start the lap. And Lorenz actually picked up some wing damage, so he had to come straight into the box. Not what he would have wanted, and it's put him off cycle now to everybody else as Oscar goes up into P7 only. I think everyone is pretty much on a scrub set of tyres to get these first laps on the board. But yeah, certainly not what Lorenz would have wanted. He might now have to rush to get this banker lap on the board, or he might have to abort it and come back into the pits and to get any chance of having two clean, fresh flying laps in. But yes, a strange one then, as everyone was bunched up in the final sector. But that's what you get when you try and jump the queue, and if you do that, you're going to get, well, in this case, Lorenz find out, because Dan was the car in front. He then decided to go. Lorenz tried to jump ahead of him, didn't work out, lost his end plate.
Ivan Eskrig, sorry, I just realised I was on mute for a second. You've got Ivan Eskrig, who was about to set a lap, but then invalidated his lap, as has this man, Matthias Guillet. So, the RSC man getting a big rear lock-up, and tank slapper well held here. But the Haas behind him getting a lovely tow potentially. It's Thomas Covers, but he's losing the rear as well. So I think he'll be probably diving into the pit lane. Yes, he certainly will. Losing the rear again. Everyone just happy to drift around these corners at the moment. Ivan Eskrig, no, that's definitely not purple at all, as we were just following Lorenz. Now he comes across the line to start his lap, as we just mentioned very briefly as well. I'm seeing a lot of drivers who have poignantly decided to change their helmets to the Roscoe themed helmet as well, which is a really, really nice touch of the drivers as well, because I think we all know at some point in our lives the loss of a pet, and I'm sure Lewis Hamilton is definitely not watching WOR Legacy Division, but I think everyone is certainly thinking about him and the rest of the family after Roscoe's passing, because it's certainly a precedent setter himself, a personality within the F1 paddock, and it is just sad to see, isn't it, when a pet decides a pet decides to die. When a pet dies, it's awful, isn't it? And the bottom line is the drivers are all thinking about sort of that as well, because they can all relate to it.
Of course, it's a very nice little touch there from obviously the majority of the drivers, although he decided to run it. So, yeah, obviously, I don't expect Lewis to be watching this. If he is, hi Lewis, but I don't expect you to be. Nonetheless, it's very nice for them to do that. Nice little touch, nice little tribute there for Roscoe. But, he lived a very good life, lived to a very good old age, and obviously, he'll be in, a lot of the drivers' thoughts and obviously Lewis's thoughts. But one thing Lewis is going to have to do, though, is to, try as hard as it might sound to get that out of his mind. Obviously, when it comes to this weekend's Grand Prix, as Lorenz there gets his first banker lap time on the board of a 14.7, it goes over to P5, just behind Dan and 1,000th ahead of Thomas Covers. But as I said, he's now going to be off strategy and offset to everybody else with less than 9 minutes to go. He might just about squeeze in 2 more attempts here, but he's certainly going to have to push, which is what he's going to be doing, and thankfully the driver's getting out of his way, even though he's not on a lap. But it is SCI who are out at the front, and it is SCI's Tony Rees, who's back out on the front as he was last time, wanting to get that lap in early to have the clean air and not have anybody. I mean, if you just look, about a sector behind, you've got the best part of 8 to 9 cars there, all very close together.
Yes, Tony Rees obviously just wanted to get a little bit of an inroad, really, on this particular circuit, not get blocked by anyone. I think he's timed it just about right, chucking the car through the right-hander then at the bottom of the circuit. Turns 16 and 17, he gets going with his lap in the SCI Mercedes. So, opportunity knocks here for Tony, because this is a man who clearly can set the initial pace. Just behind, by the way, you've got the ET8 of Sergio wanting to also get on with it as well. So, again, he set the early precedent. He's managed to show that he's got the pace in this particular car, in this particular circuit. Can he convert that to another front row or another first place at the end of Q2 before going into Q3?
So that certainly will be his goal and will be his target. We might actually be hoping to do what he did last time and just put on one fresh set of soft tyres, and that might be enough for him to get through into Q3, but we'll have to wait and see. We're about 10th and a half up through the first sector as we come through this S section. Off the off the battery, back on the battery then again, and then back off it as we come through the final few parts. How are we through the middle split? And over half a second up, so we're already potentially delving into the 1 minute 13s here as we come into the final sector, into the stadium complex section. Now gets the car turning nicely, and the car very nice and settled over the curbs, unlike a few of the drivers that we've seen, especially through Q1. A little bit of a wiggle there, though, through the penultimate corner, complaining a little bit for traction. That could be down to the tyres overheating come the end of the lap, but it is a 13.9, and that should be Tony through to Q3, if I'm honest. Well, I'd be surprised if that wasn't enough, but yes, certainly set the timing board to light there.
Yeah, Sergio hasn't set the timing board to light, though, as well. I'll be honest with you, the 14.5 is not particularly quick, if I'm perfectly honest with you here. So Sergio is starting to really struggle out there at the moment in his qualifying form. Here comes Dan. He goes second fastest with a 14.272. FRT are pretty happy that they've got him in the roster, because he's showing some serious pace, that is for sure. We've got Leon, who's just gone fourth fastest, as SCI have made it 1-2 with Oscar with a 14.0. But Azim coming across the line with a 13.9 of his own. Ventauris Thomas coming across with a 14.2 dead. So very, very good stuff indeed. Gavroche going fifth fastest. And then Lucas for RSC again showing the pace out there at the moment for Ferrari with a 14.181 of his own. It's cracking stuff, to say the least. Ivan Eskrig, only 11th fastest for the pole sitter from 2 weeks ago. He's got to go out again if he wants to try and get through to Q3 as it stands.
Indeed, but it's not just him though. The four drivers behind him, obviously Lorenzi's obviously offset, as we know, but Thomas, Yasia, and obviously Mattis all invalidated their lap times. And Yasia is in the same boat as to what he was in Q1, and having to go for one final attempt to obviously to try and get through what was from Q1 to Q2, and now from Q2 to Q3. Tell you what though, a little bit surprised that Quantum once again down, obviously in the lower regions of the top 10 in P8, as Tony has decided he is through into Q3. He's happy enough for that time. We should see Azim do the same thing when he gets back into the pits with his 13.9 of his own. Probably expect Oscar to retire. Lucas is kind of a little bit on the bubble, maybe in that .1s. I probably expect those from P5 downwards maybe to go out again. I could be completely wrong. But yeah, Quantum is the one that surprises me. The fact that he's behind, not just behind his teammate, but it's 800s in the Legacy division is a lot of time.
Yeah, it is a lot of time to find for Quantum. Dan leading the way, though, at the McLaren outfit for FRT. The biggest shock for me is probably not a shock for a lot of people. Sergio is really not in form at the moment in the Legacy division, and generally across the esports sphere as well. I believe he's also not in the best form either. Currently down in P10 and on the brink, you've got the likes of Ivan Eskrig, who's definitely got more pace in him. Definitely the HR drivers, and I would expect Thomas Covers to be a bit faster than a 14.7 as well. We've got to be honest here. Sergio is in deep trouble here for ETA, because if another pre-Q3 exit here for ETA could be seriously detrimental for their championship. Remember, the gap is starting to grow pretty considerably, especially after that poor Qatari Grand Prix. ETA really needs Sergio to find the pace now.
They certainly do, and I mean, he can't be dragged along by his teammate like he was last week by Mario, and obviously this week it's Azim, who's obviously comfortably through into Q3 with that spectacular 13.9. But I have just read the chat, and according to Dirk, Sergio was on another set of used tyres for that lap time, as was Quantum. But the fact that Quantum then is over 2/10 quicker than Sergio, both on used tyres, still brings up warning and red flags potentially for Sergio here if he's not quite got the pace. He might have to rely potentially on drivers behind him not improving or having their own fumbles or flunders, let's just say, as the top four have all decided that they are done. They think they're through to Q3, as does Thomas once again with that 14.2. Could we have another scenario of Thomas squeezing through into Q3 this time and being in P10? We'll have to wait and see. It's a case of what his teammate now does. But with him only being 2,000s ahead of Dan, I expect him to come back out on track. So we should have 10 drivers fighting it out for the final 5 places to go into Q3.
Yes, so Thomas Covers will be the first person to set a lap. Behind him is the Hadrick Racing driver of Lorenz Sill in P12. So these drivers, of course, are currently knocked out as it stands, but they've got 2.5 minutes here, so it's a plenty of time to have another go at this one. Just make sure you don't bottle it. Here it comes through 16 and 17, then Thomas Covers, the IRT man, looking in to get into the dizzy heights of a double Q3 showing here for the international racing team. Here they come then going through towards turn 1, one of the longest straights, of course, heading through into turn number 1 here. Plenty of opportunity for overtaking before we even get to turn 1 in the main race, we suspect. Here's turn 2, here's turn 3. He's gone a little bit wide going through turn 3. He's not happy to take that curb here, as he got a lower downforce set up on, perhaps with the suspension settings set a little bit stiff and the ride height a little bit low, means that maybe he's just not too happy to touch the curbs here. Here he comes then, coming across then into the first part of the non-stadium section, if you will. Here he comes through the right-hander, getting out of the way. There is the other car on the left-hand side, then chucks the car through the left. You'll want to keep this now as planted as you possibly can here. Try and not lift as much as you can, because all of your time can be made or broken here at that particular part of the circuit. 10.5 up in the second sector, looking pretty sharp for the Haas, but then he's invalidated as Thomas Covers. Now he's got to recharge the battery, but he hasn't got a lot of corners to do it here. I have a sneaky suspicion IRT have got one driver knocked out here. Thomas Covers invalidating at that final corner. What would have that lap time been? Would have been a 14.339, and that would have put him in P9. So it would have been on the brink. But, well, I think he's now out as a result of that one. Yassir comes across the line. He's just starting his lap. Lorenz is just about finishing his lap. But in fact, he's actually gone for a double cool. So now he's getting on with his lap. And again, following out of sequence, he continues to be out of sync with everyone else. Quantum goes into P4, though, with a 14.164. Pushes Venturi down to 6th and 7th and beating Lucas on that occasion. Sergio looking to also improve as well. Sorry, we got here going through turn number 16 into turn number 17. Here comes Sergio looking to try and get himself. Can he get at least up there with the faster laps? 14.1. It's a much better lap, but with everyone so tightly compact here, Bobbers, I'm going to be honest with you, P6 is not something they're going to be particularly comfortable with.
Definitely not, and especially when you've got the likes of Dan, who's over a 10th, just about 10.5 up on his current lap time, apparently purple through the middle sector. Mattis is out of qualifying, so only a 14.7 for him. Dan goes into P4 and back ahead of his teammate, so FRT should have 2 drivers there through into Q3, both of the .1s. Sergio obviously moving off track to get out of the way there. Gavroche now a 10.5 up through the first sector himself. He's got time to find, because he's got the likes of Leon, who's 2/10 up now, coming through the stadium section, down in P10 at the moment, as Yassir now pops himself into the top 10 for the time being. But I think Leon is going to displace him, and indeed he does, but only just. He lost time there through the final sector, but goes P9. That is Yassir out of qualifying. Lorenz now goes P10. That knocks Gavroche now down to P11. He's just up on his lap time for the moment. It's him and Ivan Eskrig at the moment who've got to finish their lap times. Where can Gavroche go? He now goes P10 just ahead of Lorenz. So it's going to be Lorenz, sorry, not Lorenz, Gavroche versus Ivan Eskrig as to who makes this final part of qualifying.
Yes, HR are both definitely out of qualifying here. Even Eskrig can both get at least one of their drivers through here. So as it stands, no, he's only P13 is Ivan Eskrig, and that is bitterly disappointing for the pole sitter 2 weeks ago in Qatar. So he is out and will start P13. Both of the HR drivers starting 11th and 12th. At one point, way back when, that would have been classified as second pole. It's no longer a position here. Is P11 as second pole. So now he is out of qualifying. Gavroche managing to sneak through by just 29 thousandths of a second. Goes to show every thousandths of a second counts in this championship. Gavroche is through. Ventauri have got both of their drivers through. IRT have got a driver through. ET8 have got both of their drivers through. RSC, Lucas, is looking so sharp out there. He's through with both of the FRTs and, of course, both of the Shizu-Seeder Igniters. That's the end of Q2. ET8 Azim leading the way from the front, from Tony Reich, from Oscar, Dan, Quantum, Lucas, Sergio, Thomas, Leon, and Gavroche, as we said. Those that were knocked out down at the back, Lorenz with Yasia, Ivan Eskrig, Thomas Covers, and Matthias Guillet. They are out of qualifying. So, very quickly before we head through into Q3 then here, Bobberts, we're going to take another very quick look at the drivers, because this is the question now, because obviously the managers have had their opportunity for their first transfer window of the season, and transfer window galore. Plenty of people coming in, but plenty of familiar faces. Sergio keeping his spot at ET8, but at the moment showing that he is well off the pace versus Azim. Question for you here: if you were in ET8's position, surely there'd be a consideration about where you would pick Sergio now.
Exactly, yes, obviously, because you can only use your driver for 3 of the 5 races per segment that we have here. So it's a case of obviously, where perhaps Sergio is. I mean, he's obviously not as quick as his teammate Azim based off the first 2 qualifying sessions. Obviously, they would have spoken to the rest of the team thinking, who's the quickest. They would have all practiced, or a number of them will have practiced to see who is the best liner, the strongest liner that we can put out for this week. And maybe Sergio is just not giving it 100%, or he's serving it, maybe he's saving a bit in reserve. We don't know that, but based off what we've seen so far, it's been very kind of squeaky bum time for him and just about making it through. But he's there though. That is the thing. He's got himself through at least into Q3 this time around, which is a lot more than what could be said last time out of Qatar. So it's an improvement nonetheless, but it's a little bit not disheartening, but the fact he's over 2/10 down of his teammate come the end of Q2, and his teammate did his lap time much earlier in the session. Maybe there's a few little alarm bells ringing, and he's obviously going to be on the back foot going into Q3 here, because he's not going to have the same number of set of fresh tyres compared to his teammate, and obviously with the likes of the SCI boys as well as Lucas as well, and maybe even Thomas as well actually would have saved himself a set of tyres after just squeezing through yet again through a qualifying session. But yeah, Sergio on the back foot a little bit. I don't expect him to be towards the front here. I think we're looking at probably a 3 or 4 car shootout for this. I could be wrong. Maybe Dan or Quantum could get themselves in amongst there, but I think it's really between the 2 SCI drivers and Azim here for pole.
Yeah, and that's, I think, the expectation here on this one. Let us know who your favourite is for pole here. My favourite, I'm going to go out on a whim, and I'm actually going to put Lucas in the mix, because I think RSC have got something a little bit special in that Ferrari man here tonight, and I think if everyone just drops the ball a little bit, as SCI have proven that they haven't, EVE Lucas will be very happy to swallow up any positions that are lost. So he is going to be one, if it's not for pole, he's going to be one to watch for the race. That is for certain. Either way, we've got just a bit over 10 minutes in this session. No activity out on the track as of yet. Gives us an opportunity to head over to the chat, if you don't mind. Good evening to every single one of you tuning in. If you are watching us live here on this Tuesday night at 3 minutes past 8 in the evening in the United Kingdom. If you're not tuning in live, where have you been? Feel free to watch us at 7:15 every evening, every Tuesday evening for WOR Legacy Division, as we now start to see the first laps of Q3. And would you believe it, the person going out first, no surprises, as it's been consistency with his behaviour throughout this entire qualifying. Tony Reich is the one leading from the front for SCI.
Indeed, obviously he just likes to think I have that clean air. Obviously doesn't want anybody anywhere near him, and yeah, he's doing it once again. And best part of half a minute later, the next lot of drivers are deciding to come out on track as well. But yeah, Tony seems to be flying the flag to an extent, but also I think he just wants to get out there, get the lap time on the board, and don't have to worry about anything. He can then settle down, a bit more time to relax between the end of his first attempt and then going into the final attempt, a good 5-6 minutes later into the session. So we'll stick on board obviously with the Mercedes SCI man, see what he can do. Expect him to set a very, very quick lap time here. I mean, pole, I think could be 13.8, 13.7 perhaps, maybe, with the track now rubbering in. It shouldn't really be green anymore coming into this final qualifying session. But well, we'll just have to wait and see, as everyone is now pretty much coming out onto the track now. The final 2 cars about to leave the pits. It's Gavroche and Dan, all 10 drivers out on track, as Tony just clobbers the ball out there on the inside, decided he doesn't want to see it anymore as he starts his his penultimate attempt.
Yeah, my old racing league, like a little grassroots league called Synergy PWR, we made a rule up: if you were in qualifying and you knocked down a bollard like that one whilst keeping within track limits, you get 10 seconds knocked off your time. So cracking effort from Tony Reach to actually keep it within the track limits despite knocking the bollard off. Here it comes through turn 1 then. I wouldn't anticipate that these are going to be blisteringly quick lap times. I'd expect they're probably going to be a used set of soft tyres on Tony's car, but you never know, he might decide to go for it flat out anyway as he comes across the sector 1 split. 27.8 in the first sector indicates probably a used tyre once again, getting up on the curb a little bit. Car didn't particularly look comfortable bouncing over that one, a bit more of a stiffer suspension potentially. Tony Reich then just coming across then into the left-hander here. This is going to be such an excellent set of corners, this, in qualifying and time trial trim. The car just glues to the circuit as you go through into 8th gear. It's absolutely fabulous. Here he comes then through into turn number 12, not going to get blocked by anyone on this occasion as he looks to try and set an early precedent. If he can get into the low 14s on a used set of soft tyres, that should be the one that sort of makes everyone a little bit fearful of the pace here of SCI's Tony Reich. Here he comes then across the final couple of corners, 16 and 17, low 14 is what he's looking for. Oh wow, it's a 13.8. If that is a used set of soft tyres, that will be blisteringly quick. It might be a set of new ones though. We've got other people on laps as well. Keep an eye out as they come in thick and fast. A few invalidations actually as well, but Sergio has actually gone fastest in the first sector, so he's looking particularly sharp. Leon is the next person to set a lap. Did not look comfortable at all through turn number 12 here, Bobberts. He'll be looking to try his hardest to set an early precedent here. Will he be able to get anywhere near Tony Reich's time? I'm anticipating probably not. 14.4 for the IRT man.
The team now comes through the final couple of corners. It's a 14 flat there, so he's nearly 2/10 off Tony after the first attempt there, which did include going a little bit wide entering the stadium section. Wow. As Oscar now going into the 13.7s. I'll tell you what, I thought Tony Reich's middle sector was absolutely on fire, and I think it was his first sector that let him down there. He's been best part of a 10th and a half off what all the other drivers have been doing, so there's clearly time there to be found for him, but the fact that he still managed to get that 13.8 is very, very respectable. Here comes Lucas now and sets a 14.0 of his own, goes ahead of Azim and into P3, and he will be absolutely delighted with that of these first attempts. Dan now coming through the final couple of corners. There is a Red Bull actually there ahead of him with Gavroche, but only a 14.6, definitely a used set of tyres. What can Dan do here for FRT? Goes just ahead into P7, and Quantum, the only driver to set an invalid lap time.
Yes, so not the cleanest of laps then from Quantum. A correction on the board here. Oscar and Tony Reich looks like they were both on new sets of soft tyres. And I'll say if that was an old set of soft tyres, that is unbelievably fast for them. But it looks like a new set of soft tyres for both of the SCI boys. I did say keep an eye on Lucas though, didn't I? He's managed to, as it stands so far anyway, out-qualify both of the ET8 drivers who are now on the second and the third row of the grid. As a result of Lucas just being that little bit faster. And I think that picture right now you see in the top left-hand corner, Bobberts, where you've got SCI on top and ETA on the next group of drivers close by. The problem for ETA is there's always someone a little bit faster than them, and that's where they're losing their points.
Indeed, yeah, and they've got to get at least in between both SCI drivers, let alone try and get ahead of them. But at the very minimum, I'd say they've got to be, if they're going to be behind them, they've got to be, right behind them, and it's on the second row of the grid as it currently stands. Azim is there doing that, but Sergio, best part of 3/10 off to what his teammate has done, which we have seen pretty much throughout the entire of qualifying. He's been the best part of a 10.5 to 2.5 tenths off his teammate, but he's still got time, still got 4.5 minutes pretty much still to go here in this final part of qualifying. We'll have probably about a minute of a lull before the drivers start to come out again. I can probably put my money on that Tony will be the first one out once again to get his final lap time on the board. But no, it's a fantastic effort there from Lucas to get himself into P3. And it's kind of a similar thing to last week, like we had with Ivan, a driver towards the top that potentially we wouldn't have expected. And, you did, say he could have a chance for pole position. He was your pick. And, I know he's got to find 0.3 of a second, but that's not impossible.
Yes, and I'm just heading over back to the standings while we're waiting on people to get ready for the final run in Q3. And again, look at the situation for RSC. They're on 39 points. They're a point behind 8th place IRT, basically at the foot of the table, with one person looking like he's actually in a podium sort of sitting area. Is a really, really good scenario here for RSC to close down their chase on those in the midfield, especially considering how close it is as well. Because if you take a look at the Hadrick Racing, they're on 57. That's only, 18 points behind 9th place. So if they can get a 15-point chunk, that rises them up a couple of positions if AMR and IRT have a bad race. So it's all fairly critical stuff here. Those podium positions here could pose as a bit of a godsend, if you will, to the man at the moment in RSC for Lucas. As we've seen, one of the McLarens, it looks like Quantum, has been booted out by FRT, told to get on with it, and no surprise on that one, because without a lap time to be had in Q3, I want to give him every opportunity to potentially get those tyres up to scratch and have a go. There'll be a new set of soft tyres. What do you reckon? Push, cool, push, or do you reckon cool, cool, push?
I think it's more a case of if he does what he did last time around and invalidates, he's got enough time to recharge that battery and go again. He'll want to try and get it done and get it done with on his first attempt if he can. But I have a sneaking suspicion that he could be fueled for 2 laps here, just to ensure that if he does mess up, he's got enough time to go again. Dan, obviously his teammate there, is the second driver out on track. Just about has enough time in case if he was to do that again. But yeah, Quantum obviously on the back foot down in P10 without a lap time on the board. So all the pressure is on him and FRT at the moment, who we haven't really mentioned had a very... not a really great outing last week, and 2 weeks ago in Qatar. I mean, Dan was there or thereabouts, obviously, just on the higher fringes of the midfield. But again, they've not been really bringing in the points compared to, obviously, since their opening win on the first round of the season, which Quantum obviously did bring for them. But since then, they haven't really shown a great deal of consistency and pace. So they want to try and rebound, obviously, going to this next segment. And with both drivers, at least in Q3, they have a good opportunity. Well, here comes Quantum, potentially on his final attempt here in qualifying. Will want to try and get himself at least in the top 4 at a bare minimum.
Sector 1 yellow flags waved, and that's for a slowing Red Bull, I believe, on the outside. It's one of the Ventauris. Just letting Quantum get past and get on with it. Very happy to take much more of the curbs compared to some of the other drivers here, so potentially just a little bit higher on the ride height here for the FRT man. Obviously prioritising not the straights, but rather these bits, the corners of this particular circuit, where you can gain or lose so much time because of the 90-degree nature of the circuit. Chuck the car through the right-hander here and here, get on the power as early as you possibly can, let it go out wide a little bit, because you've got a little bit of tarmac available off the end of the curb. Cook it through here. Very happy to take a bit of grass as well on that inner tyre. I've seen a lot of people do that one, to be fair. Going through then the right and then the left-hander of 10 and 11. Car looking particularly planted. 55.1 in the second sector is pretty quick, actually. Coming through the final sector, then turn 12, here's 13. Get the car in as early as you can. It's very well planted. This is a great lap, actually, from Quantum from FRT. Coming across the final corner. He's invalidated. Can you believe it? And that, of all places to invalidate, is not where it was meant to be. It was a 14.3, but I'm telling you, that was going to be a high, if not potentially a very low, high 13, low 14 from Quantum there. Of all places to invalidate, turn 16 is the worst place to do it.
Indeed it is. Obviously, he can't then go again. I do agree with you. I think he was at least a 14 flat there. Tony now coming through the final corner. He's a 10th up on his lap time at the moment, but he does not go ahead of his teammate Oscar. Lost a little bit of time in that final sector. Still, Oscar leads the way for the time being. And no, Dan into P3, just showing potentially what Quantum could and should have done there. And in the end, it wasn't quite good enough. Asim now gets into the 13.8, but not good enough to dismantle SCI. What can Sergio do? The man who's been kind of lucky in some respects to get himself through into this final part of qualifying here, hasn't really shown the pace. Can he now do it where it matters? Where's it going to be? He goes into P4 right behind his teammate with a decent lap there at the end. Lucas did not improve to get ahead of him, so ETA have at least got the bare minimum on the second row of the grid as it currently stands, but we still have both Ventari drivers to complete their lap times, as well as Oscar himself, who I think is improving on his best lap time, and in fact no, he wiggles across the line to show that he didn't actually improve in the end. Gavros
Roche goes into P5. That just leaves Thomas
Don't
now
go P6.
as the final driver to set a lap time. Is it going to be P6? Let's see. No, it's P1.
I was going to say that would have been very poignant, wouldn't it, if it ended up being a bit of a SCI ET8 VNT 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But in the end, that just goes to show, doesn't it? If Quantum didn't invalidate what FRT could have brought to the table there, EV's Lucas should be RSC's Lucas. You'll be wondering what happened with him. He invalidated his lap, so he can't improve on his 14.0 as a result. I think he probably had a 13.9 in him as well, to be honest with you. So he'll be disappointed with that one, but not nearly as disappointed as Quantum. That is not great from the FRT man. He'll start P10. Pole position, though, not to Tony Reich as we expected, but to Oscar. SCI are showing the pace is not anywhere near as further down as perhaps it could have been after a 2-week break. They're extremely happy, not just with the fact that they've got pole, but the fact that both of their drivers are in such close proximity to each other, which suggests a real synergy between driver A and driver B here for the Scottish outfit. SCI are on pole with both of their drivers in a front row lockout with Oscar and Tony Reich. Azim and Sergio, they'll be happy ET8. They've got 3rd and 4th. They can do a lot with that long straight going down into turn 1, so they could create some havoc. Ventauri have got Gavroche in 5th with FRT in 6th with Dan. You've got RSC in 7th with Lucas. Will be disappointed with that because he's got more pace in him than that, so keep an eye on him in the race. Leon is in 8th for the Haas IRT team. Ventauri Thomas will be disappointed with 9th. Quantum very disappointed without a lap time on the board for P10. That is the break of that one. We'll see what we've got coming up in just a few short moments. Gives us an opportunity, just another quick reminder of the standings here then, Bobbers. Jesus Cedar Igniters at the front. ET8 second place in the championship. A direct reflection of that qualifying.
Yes, pretty much summed up there very well, actually, once again there, Jota. But yes, I'll tell you one thing, though. The fact that Sergio got himself up into P4 at the end, just showing that, I'm not saying he held back like I may have said earlier. I think it was just a little tentative, perhaps, and then just giving it 110% there for that final qualifying lap, and at least got himself to where he needs to be at the bare minimum. And at least for ET8's sake, they can actually challenge SCI. If they can perhaps split them going into turn 1 or some point through the first lap, then they will use that to their advantage if they possibly can. They will go with a two-pronged attack to try and get ahead of the SCI drivers, but neither Tony or Oscar are just going to wave the white flag and just let them by. They will work together to ensure that they can keep them behind, but strategy is going to be key. It's going to be the same scenario again, though. One driver is going to have to undercut or overcut, or go a lap longer at least. It'll be interesting to see what strategies we're going to have. It's probably going to be the usual one-stop medium to hard, but I'm interested to see how Azim and Sergio go about this. How do they? They're going to have to be aggressive, clean but aggressive, I think, with Oscar and Tony to try and reduce their gap at the front. But they still have to look over their shoulders, I still, like you said, Lucas was, I think, going to be a disappointing down in P7. What can he? What's his race pace going to be like? Ventauri, obviously, there. Dan as well. They could easily all get ahead and jump them. All it takes is a mistake, and it could easily jumble up the field.
So there'll be no restart in this one. We are getting straight into the race. The drivers are just taking a quick breather and having a quick drink before they get on with this particular race. So very quickly on this one, Bobbers, before we get going then. Early indications, by the way, Azim has just mentioned in the chat, he thinks he's just thrown away pole. He thinks that he had pole position potentially on the cards. He had about 2.5 tenths. He was down 2.5 tenths in the first sector. So that will be one to watch here. If Azim has sort of sandbagged a little bit throughout that and has actually got a little bit more pace, especially going into turn 1. So who's your favourite for this one?
Again, it's a bias aspect, I guess you could say. Obviously, I want to go with my own team, and I would love it if one of them could. I think, if I'm honest, though, if either of the SCI drivers were to finish ahead of the other, I would put Tony ahead of Oscar. Just, I think, throughout the majority of qualifying, he was ahead of him, and I know it's one lap pace compared to race pace. We've got 36 laps here tonight, so anything can happen. I'm going to go with the Tony win, But I wouldn't count out Azim. I think Azim is going to be the biggest threat to SCI. And that's not any disrespect towards Sergio or anybody else that's behind. I just think Azim has got that little bit of extra pace. And if he made a mistake of himself and could have actually have had pole position, I think he's definitely one to keep an eye out on and potentially could steal it away from them with a good strategy or some good race pace. But we'll have to wait and see. That's my pick at least anyway. What about yourself though, Jota? What are your thoughts? Could we have a surprise victor?
Yeah, I do think Lucas has got some serious pace behind him, but I think that qualifying now is potentially going to be the kicker for him. So I think probably he's out of it. I'm not going to throw away a chance for ET8 here, though, because especially going into turn 1 with how close it's going to be between those 4 drivers, there could be a little bit of a mixed bag here at the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez. It's going to be an intense race ahead of us. No more waiting. Let's go racing here in Mexico. Oscar does get the good start here from Tony Reich and Azim and Sergio trying to also get in the mix. Remember, it's a long straight going into turn 1. Both of the ET8 drivers haven't had the best start, but they've got the toe. Here they come going into turn 1. Are they going to go for it? They're certainly not on this occasion. They're going to keep it nice and cool, nice and easy. Are the 2 Alpines and the 2 Mercedes in front? There's a little bit of a touch on the back end there, potentially, from Azim and from Tony Reich. We've got someone out at the back. It's Matthias Guillet here for RSC, who is also struggling a little bit. They're still going into the mix here. Here comes Azim around the outside. What a move this will be. If he gets the gap, they're going to touch wheels, but it's going to be excellently crafted from the Alpine Renault. That gap has been shot, but even though he is there, Azim gets the move done and gets it done on Tony Reich. And Tony Reich was caught napping a little bit, but he's determined to have the inside. He's forced off of the track. Here's Azim. Azim will say, I had that corner. They're still going side by side through 10, through 11, switch back at 11, going through into 12. They're still side by side. Can you believe it, between Tony Reich and Azim? Here comes the ET8 man around the outside at turn number 12. He's off of the track at least a little bit. Tony Reich will say that's not fair. Here comes Sergio also in the mix as well, trying to put Tony Reich under pressure. This is exactly what I mean about ET8 third and fourth. They can put early pressure here on the second driver in Tony Reich, and that's exactly what's happened. Kevin Zumberg already with a 3-second penalty for track extension issues. Sergio will continue this pressure. Tony Reich is trying to get as close as he can, but Azim has already started to put a gap on him. Here comes the Alpine Renault. Is he going to go for the move, Sergio? It's going to be critical here for ET8. They box him in down the inside going into turn 1. He will have the move around the outside and on the inside of the next corner. Off of the circuit he will go, and Sergio will say that's unfairly kept. He might have to then fight for it going through into the next set of corners. Here he goes, door firmly shut, but he's determined to walk through it anyway. Class stuff here from Sergio. He gets the move done, but can you believe Tony Reich is still battling down the inside of the next corner? It's fabulous racing between them, and Tony Reich is still in front. Fantastic defending from the SCI man.
That's a lap and a half of fantastic racing. I wasn't even looking at anybody else further behind. I was just keeping my eyes on these 3 going hammer and tongs between them. And it all started by a little bit of contact between the SCI boys through the first couple of corners. And that is what gave ET8 the chance. And Azim has at least taken that opportunity. Oscar has cleared out in front with all that squabbling and battling that they've been having. Azim now is clear of the DRS from Tony. And Sergio is going to have another bite of the cherry here to make a move down in towards turn 1, but this time with the aid of DRS. Tony hasn't really got the battery to defend this. Is he using any at the moment? No, he's not. I think this is going to be a move done before turn 1 for the second ET8 man, and indeed it is. Sergio goes into P3. They have both split the SCI drivers. It's exactly what they needed to do, and it's first blood to ET8, even with Oscar leading out in front by 1.8 seconds. He's clearing off into the distance. Kevin actually picked up a time penalty. I know we didn't really cover it. There is action in the background for what is P19 and P20, but that is phenomenal racing between the 3 drivers. A lot of wheel banging and potential. Do you know what? At one point, any one of those 3 drivers could have been turned around there, but they just about kept it on track. But there could be a few questions asked after the race potentially.
Well, I'm just catching my breath after that one, and my voice is already starting to go. I've got another 33 laps of racing on this one as well. I'm going to get a sip of water in a second on this one. But Sergio getting that move done now on Tony Reich means that Sergio can now work with Azim here, just use the DRS off of the back of him and try and close down the gap on Oscar. But if anything, Oscar is absolutely flying high at the moment. Gap now 2.1. There's your changes in position across the rest of the field, because of course we've been solely focusing on the front P4. VNT's Thomas and Quantum have had great starts. They're up 3 positions. Lucas has had an appalling start alongside Dan and Leon. They've both lost 2. 5 positions lost. Sorry, 3. Is that 3 positions? I can't quite tell. Sergio and Azim have decided to switch positions here. So Sergio, despite not being the faster driver in qualifying, perhaps thinks he's got the better race pace. He gets the move done. And here comes Azim, who gets off of the circuit. He'll take a warning for that one. And Tony Reich is now beginning to put a little bit of pressure on the second ET8 man. Gets into his wing mirrors. And I think has caught, actually, Azim napping a little bit here. Got his wing mirrors, spooked him. He's locked up and has now lost even more time as a result of that lock-up through this set of corners here. Not known for its overtaking, but that shows the mindset of the drivers. They're on the absolute limit, and Tony Reich, despite the fact he's been double-dosed by ET8, is happy to keep putting the pressure and maybe just spoil the party a little bit for the Spanish outfit.
Indeed, Jesse wants to try and get those positions back as quickly as he can. He figured at least split them. That will be his goal and will be his target. But obviously, I think the idea with ET8 is they're just going to potentially keep swapping places with the aid of DRS and not lose all the time to Oscar. They've gained a couple of tenths on this lap alone, based off, with the help of that DRS for Sergio to get that, top straight line speed. He's actually lost that now, though, through the final couple of corners. So the gap remains at 2 seconds between the top 2. Here comes the scene now with that DRS using the battery. Sergio using the battery himself will go to the inside line. Not too sure why he's kind of defending from his teammate unless he's just going to let him have the racing line, and indeed that is exactly what he is doing. So Azim now back into P2, so I expect ETA to keep this slingshot effect going to try and close back in on Oscar at the front, but they've got to keep an eye on Tony Reich there, as to he could just take any little slip, as he nearly did at this point on the previous lap. Try to spook Azim. Is Sergio going to be spooked? The answer is no. He comfortably makes the apex of the corner and maintains P3. Obviously, great start for VNT now back up into P5 and 6. Then it's nearly a 2x2 formation in the top 8, just with that little split. But the rest of them all just seem to be settling down, and it's all happening from P2 to P4.
Yeah, and just a little bit off of the circuit from Leon here. That's the IRT man looking to try and set some early inroads against Lucas. He's not had the greatest start as Lucas. He's not on any kind of negative tyre delta either, is Lucas. So perhaps he's just trying to manage his tyres, unless he's been in a little bit of a racing scenario. Quantum is starting to get a little bit close here to Thomas. Now, this is the kind of pace that we expected from Thomas. He wasn't able to get a clean run at all in Q3. He's already beaten Dan, and he's already in the pit lane as well. He's getting off of these medium tyres. Is he pitting because he's got a front wing issue, or is he pitting purely from a tactical point of view? We'll see what happens now. Diving into the pit lane, and it looks to me as if it is purely a tactical decision. Off of the mediums, straight onto the hards. A bunch of other people electing to do the same. Ivan Eskrig doing the same for AMR, and Lawrence Seal also doing exactly the same thing, as well as Matthias Guille. That is the HR and the RSC men. So they are now down at the back on a fresh set of hard tyres. 30 laps to the end.
Not too sure about that one. I mean, we'll wait and see. But unless Quantum hasn't quite got the tyre wear, I guess he's not quite potentially say the Volakongan and the tyre whisperer, I guess you could say. But or is he going for a 2-stop strategy? I'm not too sure really, from us. But we know around here at Mexico that fresh tyres gains you a lot of time. So this is a big undercut attempt here from Quantum. Whether or not Dan is on the same strategy, we'll have to wait and see and find out. But you're asking 31 racing laps in the end it will be on these hard tyres. You're asking a lot to get them to the end of the race. So let's see what the likes of Quantum, Lorenz, Ivan and Mathis can do from this particular point. Obviously they're going to have no beneficiary of DRS at all. It's a case of what the guys at the top of the field do, and none of them are none of them are interested. Some of them are actually coming into the pits, and none the least is Tony Reich from P4.
Yeah, I think, let's be perfectly candid here, there's going to be a 2-stop, isn't it? It's be brave to do 30 laps on here, but you never know. We'll see if anyone decides to be brave enough. Anyway, keep an eye on that one as Dan is approaching now into turn number 1. He's elected not to follow Quantum's lead here to get off of the medium tyre and go onto a hard. So slightly inverse strategy here for Dan, who wants to just extend his stint on these medium tyres at the moment. So as it stands so far, your top 5 looks like this. Oscar leading the way from Sergio from Azim. You've got got Gavroche Ventari, followed by FRT's Dan. And then beyond that, you've got Leon Monza, and then you've got Alex and Kevin Zunberg. Now, Zunberg, actually, if I remember correctly, actually started on the hard tyre. So he's on the inverse strategy versus literally everybody else here. So he will go a bit of a distance before he commits to his first stop of the race. But lap 7 of 36, Oscar able to hold a little bit of a gap anyway. It's usually somewhere hovering between about 1.8 and 2.1 between Oscar and Sergio. So they are trading time left, right and centre, but at the moment relatively stationary between Oscar and Sergio at the moment, as Oscar is now pitting.
Indeed, and so is Sergio, and behind so Zim is the one who's going to have to go on that extra lap. But you can see how much that undercut is so powerful around here. Quantum, just with one lap, is on the back of Tony. And so that kind of is just going to say that potentially Tony and Quantum could jump. But could they jump both Sergio and Oscar? Probably not Oscar, but they could both jump Sergio here. So let's keep a close eye on here. Oscar exits the pit lane now. Here comes Tony and Quantum down the start-finish straight. And you know what? They are both ahead of him. That 1 lap on 2 lap undercut has now put SCI back in a really good position, and the driver's going to lose out from all this. He's going to be Azim. Where is he going to be in amongst all this with obviously everybody else who's pitted? He might be lucky if he comes out ahead of Lucas at this point, who's managed to be ahead of both VNT drivers now. So Lucas having a good fight back after a little bit of a poor start, but he's back ahead of both VNT drivers and leading this big train down what is from P10 to P17 at the moment. But yeah, undercut is powerful, but Quantum might start to suffer come the end of this stint. He'll probably pit first again to do the same thing. But then what do these three what do the likes of Dan and Azim do at this particular point? They're going to drop massively.
I'm keeping an eye out on Quantum here now, because with that undercut, he's now going to manage his race pace. He hopes that he can stay within the DRS of Tony Reich and Oscar. The gap is around about 0.8 of a second. He's had to use a lot of overtake to stay within touching distance of the two Mercedes, as we've got Azim now in the pit lane. We'll see where Azim comes out now. He's just leaving his pit box right now, and I'd be seriously concerned if I were ETA, because all of the other cars are just now coming around the final corner. Where is Azim going to be here? He's just leaving the pit lane right now. He gets overcut by Quantum. He gets overcut by Sergio. Is he going to get overcut by Lucas? I think he might do, The RSC man's going to try and squeeze him as much as he can to the inside, but he goes around the outside. It's going to be a late breaker. The Alpine's got cold tyres, remember, though. But it looks like to me the ET8 man has just by hundredths of a second, if not thousandths of a second, managed to stay in front and is now in the leading train of those behind Sergio in P9. This is not ideal, if to say the least, here for ET8.
It's certainly not, but I'll tell you one thing. 1 second later of coming out of that pit stop, and he be in the midst of all this, this big train here, like I said, down to P17. So they can count themselves lucky that they have not dropped as many positions as it could have been, showing the pace that Azim has got. But he's now got to close in 2.5 seconds onto the back of his teammate. But with Oscar and Tony leading that train, I don't know if that's going to be beneficial. I tell you the one thing I am going to have to keep an eye on, though, Jota, is Dan for FRT has stayed out yet again. Is he going to try a 1-stop with everybody else being on a 2? I'm just going to change my my telemetry detail quickly just to see how far behind, what's his gap. He's got an 11-second gap over Oscar at the moment, which is obviously just going to come down very quickly over these next few laps. But Dan could try a 1-stop here. Keep an eye out on that as the race goes on.
Yeah, that could be critical here, because that is completely an alternate strategy, of course, versus everyone else, as we've got Tony Reich going off of the circuit again against Oscar here. I believe he's got 2 warnings now, Tony Reich, on that one, just getting a bit too close to his own teammate, and I think he's recognised that now, and he's just lost a little bit of time now, just getting off of the back of the rear of Oscar. But Quantum, he needs to be very wary about his ERS management at the moment, because he is trying to keep within touching distance of the cars in front of him, but he was almost derating going through into turn number 1, so he has to play it very carefully here if the FRT man wants to be on the podium here tonight. Lap 10 of 36, 26 laps to go, gap around about 6.5 tenths, and in fairness to Quantum, it looks like this one has been a little bit more of an ERS saver, but he is going to try his hardest to stay within touching distance of the 2 cars in front of him, because of course ideally he needs that tow to keep in front of, what you believe, Team ET8 in P6 and P7, though Azim of course 2.5 seconds back on Sergio in what has been not the best in terms of pit stop strategy from the Spanish outfit.
Indeed it is. Sergio now deploying that battery, and he wants to get ahead of that McLaren in front of him. He's got more battery compared to Quantum, who's now derated come the end of the straight. But is Sergio going to be close enough? Yes, he is. It's a big lunge down the inside. Quantum trying to fight it around the outside on his 2-lap older hard tyres. But in the end, the extra better tyre grip and tyre wear for Sergio gets the move done. Quantum is not going to have the battery to try and retain that position back, so Sergio gets ahead of the McLaren, gets into P5 and can set his sights now on the 2 SCI drivers in front of him. Asim has closed a few tenths so far. He's dragging Lucas along for the ride, and they have dispatched the VNT drivers who clearly are struggling and haven't quite got the pace to live with what Asim and Lucas are bringing at the moment. That gap now down to 1.8 seconds. He seems to gain it through obviously the middle sector where he's got the cleaner air, but he just loses it again with no DRS. But look at Sergio now. He's on the bubble and on the fringes of losing the DRS to the SCI drivers, and if he loses that is key to this race.
Yeah, and that will obviously invite Quantum back into the mix. But I will say one thing here. What do you do if you're ET8? If you're ET8 and you think, SCI, I've got this one in the bag, I think we're going to just have to take the L here. Does Sergio slow Quantum down to try and get Azim back into the mix so then they could try and capitalise on a 3-4? Because a 3-4 is certainly better than a 3-5 as it stands, as Gavroche has gone fastest for Ventauri on those hard tyres with a 1:17.0. That's Gavroche down in P9 with the fastest lap. Of course, remember, unlike in real life F1, WOR Legacy has continued with the fastest lap point. And of course, in a championship like this one, every point certainly counts. So Tony Reich just now sticking in behind Oscar, happy to maintain this one. Sergio now well back within the territory of the cars in front, but he's found himself in exactly the same position as Quantum. Very little ERS as he's approaching now the first part of the stadium section. You've got to be perfectly honest here in this one. It didn't work for Quantum, so why would it work for Sergio, burning all your ERS at this part in the circuit?
I think he's just doing it just to ensure, obviously, he can maintain within that DRS comfortably of the 2 drivers in front of him. What they have done is they have dispatched Quantum, who with his older tyres is now starting to feel the pain slightly, and has seen now just about, he potentially will have the DRS as Thomas now becomes the first of the big drivers towards the front of the field, picking up a time penalty, and Asim now is within a second of the McLaren in front of him. So this these 3-lap fresher tyres that Asim has got over the McLaren are now starting to pay dividends, and I expect him to try and make a move, maybe not this time round, except for Quantum making a big mistake there through the penultimate corner, losing the traction on the rears. Maybe they are overheating ever so slightly on that McLaren, but here comes Asim now using and burning that battery with the DRS. Still got Lucas coming along for the right, but here we go, and Quantum is not going to defend this at all. He'll want to try and now stick with Asim as best as he can, and Asim now gets himself into P6, and it's back as we were. It's 2 SCI drivers from 2 ET8 drivers as it was in qualifying, but Asim still got 1.6 seconds to close on the back of the train in front, as Kevin has taken the lead away from Dan, who I think his medium tyres are screaming to be taken off.
I'm just keeping a long eye on this battle here for P10 as well, because Lawrence still getting into a seriously strong battle with IRT's Leon and VNT's Thomas looking to go down the inside. Not going to be there. Here comes Yassir, who decides to welcome himself into this battle as well. He promotes himself to P12, but the Red Bull will feel very hard done by that he was in that strong battle for P10. Now, the Ventauri of Thomas is now down to P13, and he's on 6-lap old hard tyres. I don't think that's a tyre delta issue. While this is all happening, Lucas is also struggling a little bit as well. He's now got a time penalty to his name for track extension issues. He's in P8 in this battle. Gavroche having to do a double take on the front tyres as the car refuses to rotate, going through into turn number 12. So he's now beginning to struggle a little bit, you would suspect. As it stands though, ET8, 5 and 6. He gets the move done past Quantum, gap 1.1 to Quantum. You've got Tony Reich in P4 from Oscar in P3. While this is all happening, they're now catching up to the front runners who might be committing to the one stop. One of those, a 13-lap stint on the medium tyre for FRT Dan, and of course the 13-lap hard tyre stint for Kevin Zunberg. This is heroic from FRT Dan. But what does Dan do? Does he do his best here to try and welcome Quantum back into the mix? Because Quantum is starting to lose time hand over fist here. He's lost a position now to Lucas as well. So he's really struggling out there now on these 8-lap old hard tyres.
Indeed, yeah. Even with the hard tyres, obviously, meant to have the better grip. It's certainly not coming his way, as that is Thomas and even Eskrig now fighting over P13. It is the two Red Bull family drivers, let's call it, you know, and Thomas stays ahead of Ivan for the time being. But yes, at Quantum, I think he's just burnt his tyres out potentially too quickly here. Yeah, the undercut certainly helped initially, but he's now losing all that time that he had gained to start with, and Gavroche with 2 lap fresher tyres might start to close in. Lucas trying his damnedest to close in on the drivers in front of him, and you know what? I thought he was going to do it then. He was on the fringes. And oh, actually, I say that he might not have done it. Here come the leaders now. That is Kevin and FRT Dan making that pit stop. But Kevin off the hard tyres at the same point as Dan off the mediums. That tells me Dan is definitely on a one-stop strategy. But the fact that the leaders, as it were, had already closed in onto the back of him as he made that pit stop, kind of tells me this one-stop might not work. But he's going to have the fresher tyres now. It's going to be the gain at this point of the stint, but lose it later on. We'll still keep an eye on him, but is he going to rejoin the field though? It's going to be P19, potentially stone dead last behind Mattis, and in fact he's just going to stay ahead of the Ferrari man. So it's P19 for Dan, but a lot of work to do.
Lorenz Sill really struggling with the front end lockup, and that's allowed Leon right back into the mix going through into turn number 4, and the HR driver relegated to P9. Leon's not having a bad race at all actually for the International Racing Team, now up to P8, and a great effort indeed from him. Gavroche back up to P7 with Quantum in P6, Lucas in P5, and then of course no surprises in this one, ET8 for 3, Shazoo, Cedar, Igniters 2 and 1, but they're now all back in formation. They'll be keeping a very firm eye on FRT Dan at the moment, because of course with those fresher hard tyres, what is his tyre delta, what is his pace going to be like versus everyone else's, because of course these guys have committed to the 2 stop, so there will be a pit stop imminently. And where's Dan going to feed back into all of this as well, as and when people do commit to their pit stops, I wonder, as we continue now onto lap 16 of 36, 20 laps to go.
Yeah, we're not even at half race distance yet. We've still got a long way to go in this one, and anything can certainly happen. But it is back as we were. It's 2 SCI drivers versus 2 ETH drivers. It's the top 2 teams in the championship fighting it tooth and nail. Lucas, unfortunately, just losing that little bit of time now. He's got he's got 1 or 2 lap older tyres compared to those in front of him, minus Tony. But Tony obviously just being dragged along by his teammate as Lorenz now goes back ahead of Leon, and it's 2 Aston Martins versus 1 Haas here for P8, 9 and 10, going for a 2-pronged attack to try and get ahead of the IRT man, but Leon just stays in P9 for the time being. But again, this is a train from P8 all the way down to P15. To tell you what, actually, though, Gavroche is showing very good pace. The fact that he was in that train, he's cleared them massively by nearly 4 seconds now, and well, he'll catch Quantum come the end of this lap, beginning of next lap. So Gavroche could be a slight outsider on this, and he's got fairly fresher tyres as well. So see what the VNT man can do, but he's got a lot of work to do if he wants to trouble the top 4. Maybe a top 5 is on the cards for him. So Dan has now got his tyres up to temperature and up to speed. Going to compare his lap time to the leaders out in front. So Oscar does an 18.9 on that previous lap, and nearly 2 seconds off the best lap that he has set at the moment. So be interesting to see what the tyre delta is between them and Dan at the moment. But again, this is short-term gain, long-term pain for Dan. He's got to get these laps in now. Let's see what lap time it is, and it's an 18.0, so it's 9/10 of a second quicker than the leaders.
Yes, so keeping an eye on Sergio, is actually getting increasingly close here to Tony Reich. Is he going to potentially go for a dive? He is using overtake. Is he going to go for the late breaker? No, but he is going to try and catch Tony Reich, and he's certainly done it. That's exactly what he wants to do, get in his wing mirror and cause him to shake a little bit, and Tony Reich is shaking. We've seen it a couple of times, actually, just against his own teammate, how he gets a little bit caught by Oscar, potentially doing a bit more of a tyre-saving strategy, and as a result of that one, he's found himself in real trouble. Gap is now about 0.8 of a second. It's approaching 9, and it is now 9 against Tony Reich. Now, Tony Reich will get DRS off of the back, of course, of his teammate, but he is going to have to really, really make sure that this stadium section is pin precise, because otherwise he's going to find himself out of DRS unless Oscar is doing what he's doing now, which I suspect is just lift off the power and do a little bit of lifting and coasting. Just invite Tony back into the mix. You can tell Tony's mindset in this one can be easily broken, and Sergio, with all of his experience, is certainly capitalising on that, because that's not the first time he's done that.
Indeed it is. I thought for a second there, because Sergio was losing time in to his teammate, that we were going to have an ET8 swap over there with the seam on the fresher tyres, but no, that certainly isn't the case, as Thomas is already going into the pits. 11 laps after those hard tyres. And is he going to go to hard to the end and do a massive undercut here? That's a strange one for me, going in this early, as once again, Leon and Lawrence in positions for P8, and Leon gets back ahead of both Aston Martins now and leads this train. But yeah, I wonder if ETA go for a swap over here and let Yassine try and challenge the SEI drivers. He's got the freshest tyres in his top 4. He will then go later into this stint compared to those around him, unless they bring in him early and try something different. Keep an eye on that, see what they decide to try and do. Lucas now running lonely in P5, as is Gavroche now, who's got himself ahead of Quantum. He's just continuing to fall down the field here, and suffering obviously with these hard tyres, even though they're meant to have much better grip. But I'm interested to see how this plans out. What do the strategists do? What do the engineers do for these two teams at the front, Jota? It's going to be an interesting one.
It's got to be tit for tat, isn't it? First and third, second and fourth, I would suspect. But we'll see what the strategists think is the better strategy here. They've got a bit of a gap to Lucas. There's going to be no issue on that front, as Quantum and Gavroche switch positions again, and that's because Gavroche has now entered the pit lane on 11-lap-old hard tyres. He's had enough on this one as well. See what tyres he elects to pick. Is another set of hard tyres for him, as we start to see more of those 3-second penalties now starting to come in thick and fast here for the track extension issues. The latest guilty party is actually Gavroche's teammate VNT's Thomas, who's just now coming across the final corner. And Ventauri, would you believe, after all of this one, yeah, of course, everyone's still going to commit to their pit stops, but as it stands so far, they're at the foot of the table at the moment in 19th and 20th place. So the Red Bulls got a little bit of free air now to try and close down the gaps on people as and when they can. Oscar from Tony Rees, from Sergio, from Azim at the front of the field. Lucas is in P5. He's got that 3-second penalty, remember, for track extension issues that he got quite early on in this race as well. The gap to him and Quantum at the moment 2.7. So as it stands, Lucas still within touching distance potentially of getting P5, but of course he has to have that other pit stop.
Indeed it does, and yeah, like I said, keep an eye on the VNT drivers, see what they do with this big undercut. I mean, but the thing is, they're the best part of 10 seconds off the back of FRT Dan, who's doing that one-stop strategy, and he's only on 3 and 4 lap older tyres compared to them. So I don't think that's a viable strategy for VNT, but we'll see how that goes. Maybe they could bank on a safety car or something. We'll have to wait and see. As Sergio once again trying to close in on the back of Tony, but not happening. I thought, sorry, there was like cut across you there, Jota.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. I was just speaking out loud because Yassine has just entered the pit lane here now on a set of new hard tyres. Plenty of other people have sort of reacted, haven't they, to those undercuts that have occurred. One of those 4 Ventauri's, Gavroche, who has now just got the undercut on those that have, of course, pitted just now, as has Thomas for that matter. So now Ventauri up to 15th and 16th place as they look to chase down the RSC man and Matthias Guillet.
Indeed, yes. I'm still keeping an eye on Dan now, who's just joined the back of this next little mini train. Got both Kevin and Alex in front of him, and Ivan. Obviously, Kevin on those medium tyres, so he will be pitting again for another set of mediums or hard tyres fairly quickly, as Gavroche now gets the move done just about on Mattis there on the inside of turn 5 there. Turn 4, and easy move in the end, actually, for the VNT man, who gets himself up to P14. Out in front, I've missed this. Tony's out of DRS. I don't know what's happened, but that gap's now 1.6 seconds, and in fact, Tony is pitted, as is Sergio. Was there a little bit of tactics there to 100%. Slow the ETA boys down?
100%.
Yeah.
Tony's definitely 100% slowed down to try and give himself a little bit of breathing room here. That's actually very well crafted from the SCI team, who are looking to get the best here. They're not going to get the jump, I don't think, Sergio, on Tony Rees here. As you can see, just within touching distance are the two drivers, as they will both now leave the pits with only literally inches between both of those cars. 9th and 10th place they'll both come out on, but of course everyone else will need to serve their pit stops except 1 or 2 of the drivers, one of those being FRT Dan, who is now on 6-lap-old hard tyres. Kevin Zunberg, of course, he started on a set of hards. He's now on a set of mediums to the end of this race. Can he take those mediums all the way? I think the hard tyres might go the distance, but the mediums would be a really bold call.
Yeah, no, he's definitely going to be pitting again, but I think for another set of hard tyres are probably going to come in the next few laps or so. But yeah, Dan has got the best part of what is that working out at? About nearly 8 seconds over Tony, who's made that pit stop with 15 laps to go here. He's going to get caught. That's inevitable, but he might get himself a P5 finish here. Could be on the cards for Dan. I do expect both Alpines and Mercedes to get ahead of him, but it'll be interesting to see as to where he ends up come the end of this. So this one-stop strategy might work out for Dan, considering where, well, I think actually he started. Where did he start? Was it P6 overall? So he might actually end up near enough where he started, but it's certainly a bold strategy call to go for this one-stop. As there goes Leon now into the box. The Seam stays out for yet another lap. Whereas obviously Oscar has gone into the pits, and I expect to come out around his teammate, who did a very good job there of holding both ETA drivers up so Oscar doesn't get jumped potentially. But here we go now. Here comes Tony and Sergio. But you know what? In the end, I think they're both going to get ahead of him. Tony definitely has.
No.
But, it's side by side, and here comes Sergio. He's now going to try and get both of them.
Oh,
a bit of contact between the pair of them. Oscar doesn't stay ahead of them, but yeah, Sergio trying to go for the move there. Tony, he's at least split them. That's the first thing. He's at least split the two drivers.
Yeah, they were attempting to do the Bunga Racing Team box strategy there in that scenario, but unfortunately didn't quite work out for SCI, and ET8 Sergio nearly getting the jump on the both of them there to take the lead of, or the prospective lead of this race. As it stands so far, the lead of this race, after all the pit stops are completed, will actually go to FRT's Dan in P4, because of course he's going to the end of this race whilst everyone else is not. He's in a little bit of clean air at the moment as well on those 7-lap-old hard tyres, while everyone else is going to be committed to the pit stops. Is Azim going to be pitting? He's not. He's going to continue his stint later down the line here, so he's happy to lose track position, to say the least here. Lucas is in, Quantum is in, of course, no surprise, Dan is in. I'm going to be honest with you here, there could be a real risk here for Olix, actually. That's the EVR man. I think he entered the pits the wrong side of the bollard. I think he did anyway, just caught on the corner of my eye, but we'll see anyway. He now enters the pit lane as well. So, as it stands so far, Azim is still leading this race from Dan, Tony Reich, Sergio, Oscar and Gav Roche. Lorenz has got the fastest lap of this race for HR, but he won't take that fastest lap as it stands so far down in P12. So, and breathe here, Bobberts. What is ET8 cooking?
Well, I don't know what the idea is. Lucas pick up another penalty there. That's certainly not what he would have wanted. But obviously Sergio's going on the same strategy as both SCI drivers. But Asim definitely thinks he's got the pace where he can close him back again. He did it before. There's nothing to say he can't do it again. But the gap's going to be even bigger potentially than what it was last time around. Does he come into the end of this lap? Well, sticking on board with the ET8 man, see if he does make it into the pits this time. He certainly has to, or he's just going to be losing more time again, and indeed he does go into the box. So it's a case of where's he going to come out. He's probably going to be in around where Gavroche is at the moment. I tell you what, Gavroche with that big undercut has nearly got himself in DRS of the 3 leaders at the moment. So the VN team are doing a very good job on trying to close in. What's that, 1.5 seconds now off the bat. But where does Asim come out now? He's left his pit box. 49-50 miles an hour is the pit lane speed here in Mexico, and there we go. In fact, he's a long way back than I thought. That gap is huge.
Yeah, the gap is huge, though the tyre difference is also pretty huge as well. Sector 3 yellow flags wave. We've had a crash, and it's a crash between, looks like, Monza, that's Team QRT, and Matthias Guille of RSC. And it looks like Monza has retired from this session, so they've both crashed at the final corner. And Matthias Guille also retiring from this race as well. So we've got our first DNFs of this Grand Prix after 24 laps of 36. Actually, a bit of a miracle, if I'm honest with you, as well, with how close it has been between all of the drivers. But the leader of this race then, as it stands so far, is the future racing team driver of Dan. Of course, he's committing to the one-stop, as what we believe anyway, and that will take his tyres to, if my math works out right, 21 laps at the end of the stint. And if that is the case, those hard tyres are surely going to be at the point of blistering. If I'm perfectly honest with you as well, that front left tyre's not looking particularly great either at the moment, and they're only 9 laps as it stands.
Exactly, with it being a clockwise circuit, obviously the left-hand side tyres are going to take more of a punishment compared to the right-hand side. But it's a case of, is it the rear left or is it the front left, depending on obviously if you're on wheel or if you're a pad driver. If you're a pad, it's the front tyre. If you're a wheel, it's slightly more of the rear wheel. But yeah, that gap now down to 3 seconds now. It was 4 seconds at the end of the last lap. So yeah, this one-stop strategy is not paying off at the moment for Dan. I mean, yes, he's leading at the moment, but give it another couple of laps, and the first 3 drivers in behind will certainly go ahead of him. But then there's a bit of a gap to Gavroche, who's just lost a heap load of time now. Gap up to 3 seconds to the 3 in front of him. Azim now closing down hand over fist on his brand new hard tyres. Lucas in P7. Then obviously you see Thomas and Quantum running at your top 10. Quantum not going for the early pit stop this time as he did on the end of the first stint, and has got one of the freshest tyres this time round. Hopefully trying to get a bit of a revival for what was, well, unfortunately, he didn't quite have the pace on that first stint of hard tyres. But let's see, at the moment, he's hassling the second VNT driver, Thomas, who I think has actually picked up 2 penalties this race already.
I'm keeping a very firm eye on 2 situations at the moment, because Azim getting really close to Gavroche as we're following him at the moment. This is going to be fairly critical here, that Azim gets this one done as quickly as he possibly can. Whilst he's got the tyre delta, he could potentially close down on Oscar, and then towards the end of this race, whilst everyone else is going to struggle with just pure mechanical grip being down on the floor, Azim is going to have all the grip in the world, and I think this is probably not a bad call here from Azim as he gets the move done on Gavroche, as we've got massive battling happening towards the back here. Looks like Quantum and VNT's Thomas getting into the mix as well. Is Lorenz also going to look for it? He's certainly getting later on the brakes. It's a couple of lockups as well. This is the battle for P9 as it stands as well. Quantum, remember, wants to try and get at least a good situation here for FRT, especially with Dan's position at the moment on circuit. Tony Reich getting close to that battle as it stands as well, as they're still going side by side here. This is the battle between Thomas and Lorenz Sill. Here he comes down the inside line, but surely around the outside the traction is there for the Aston Martin, and HR have got one driver in as well. Oh, and AMR's Maxim also very happy to swallow up a position against the sister Red Bull car, and VNT's Thomas down to P12. Alex is now up to P16 against Ivan Eskrig, the other AMR driver, really struggling as well last pole sitter, and the person actually battling for the race win 2 weeks ago in Qatar, but now down in P17. How the mighty fall for the AMR driver. Down the inside, Thomas will go to try and defend this one against Leon, against IRT. And while this is all happening, I also want to make note, as Azim getting the fastest lap of this race, no surprises here. They will continue to close down the gap as FRT Dan gets overtaken by Tony Reich, and Sergio also wants to get this one done as quickly as he possibly can as well. I also want to mention, in the midfield, Paulos as well. That's the other QRT man, currently on his debut, on point for a potential point for his first race of this one as well. So that's also one I'm just going to keep an eye on as well.
Yes, as Dan's in the inside comes Oscar now. He's got to get this move done on Dan, and indeed he does get that done. So all 3 leaders now have passed the one stopping FRT Dan, who might have the DRS come the next lap. But yeah, this big offsetting tyre strategy now is certainly going to show it. He's just going to slowly now fall into the hands of firstly Azim, who's 3 seconds down, and then Gavroche. But saying that, Gavroche has lost a load of time himself. So maybe Dan's got a bit more pace maybe than the Red Bull man, but this very early stop strategy from VNT is now not paying dividends. Thomas now down into P14 behind Leon, obviously, and will slowly get caught in by Paulos and Alex. But yeah, like you said, how the mighty have fallen with Ivan Eskrig, last week's pole sitter and P2 finisher, down in P17. As it stands, I did not think I'd be saying that tonight, but what a difference one different track makes and 2 weeks make.
8 to go in this race as well. Thank you to every single one of you tuning in. There's 84 now tuning in for this Grand Prix here in Mexico City, and Sergio getting closer and closer here. Now remember, there is no tyre advantage here for the 2 in the front 2 because they both pitted together, and the expectation is Sergio is going to keep up that pressure against Tony Reich because he has been on his back all the way through this Grand Prix, and it has got the mindset advantage, that's for certain. He gets in his wing mirrors, and every single time Tony is locking up and causing a bit of a tiff, so Oscar will be very wary of that one and want to hope that he could potentially get the jump on Sergio at some point. But of course, remember, there is a massive tyre offset for the man that is chasing down these front 4. It is Azim in P5. He's got significantly younger tyres, but has he got enough time to catch up, get close, overtake and win?
I think, do you know what? And even though the fact that there is, around about 8 laps still to go in here, that it's definitely still doable. That is an interesting track extend though by Azim coming through turn 11. That's I don't know how he's got away with that one, I'll be brutally honest, if he hadn't got a warning for that one. But nonetheless, he's closing in very quickly onto the back of Dan, who, to be fair to him, I'll give him his credit. The fact he stayed within DRS for a second lap running, considering how old his tyres are, fair play to him. Well, I think now the cherry has dropped, and he's going to lose out now. Here on lap 29, but Asim will want to get the move done as quickly as he can on that McLaren and close in on the leaders, as that is Lucas now with his 4-lap fresher tyres over Gavroche, getting the move done for P6 on track. Obviously, he does have that time penalty. So at the moment, still down in P7, but expect him to pull away. Quantum now all alone in P8. So FRT having a decent race, to be fair, in P4 and P8. Where they'll be at the end of this race, we'll have to wait and see. Quantum comfortable in P8. Obviously, Dan will slowly fall down the field. And but either way, so, you know, fair play to Palace. I know you mentioned him before, his first race here in Legacy Division. If he can get a point, that'll be fantastic for him. I think he'd be happy with that.
Yeah, it'd be fabulous. At the moment, he's got that time penalty to his name, though, which would see Ivan Eskrig get that final point as it stands. But this is the WOR Legacy Division. Anything can happen, and it usually does, as the late, great Murray Walker once said. Gavroche is getting closer to, is actually losing time, to Lucas as it stands. Now, Lucas, already in the second stint, could show that he could put a bit of a gap between him and the car behind. So he's going to hope that the tyre delta of 4 laps, the tyre advantage of 4 laps, will be enough over the next 6 laps to try and potentially pull a gap of around about 3 seconds to Gavroche, because if he can do that, it's a solid P6 finish for the RSC team, and trust me, for them, every point is so critical. Dan has been overtaken now by Azem, as Azem is trying his hardest now to potentially get himself in a little bit of a battle with the likes of Oscar. Remember that tyre delta, tyre advantage for him is 2 laps. Is that, though, in your racing experience, Bobberts, enough? Is that going to be enough towards the end of this race to potentially have a significant tyre advantage and maybe get some overtaking done at the last second?
It's all track dependent, obviously, but for here in Mexico City, yes, it definitely is. And at the moment now, Asim is in the pound seat. He's got some overtakes to make, but the thing is, though, Oscar has got a 1-lap fresher tyres over the 2 in front of him. So he will now want to try and get a move done on Sergio, and then try and get a switch with his teammates, because at the moment SCI is still winning here in terms of, you know, overall points as it's going to be obviously for what is round 6 of this 15-round season, but they're going to want to try and cement that, and I think Oscar's going to have to try and get a move done, because look at Asim with the extra bit of traction and better traction through that final couple of corners compared to the SCI man in front of it, just closing that gap ever so slowly. Not quite enough to try and get a move done this time around. Oscar trying to get out of the slipstream a little bit to cool the engine down, because that is another thing, as I said 2 weeks ago, is, you know, engine temperatures are critical and key here, and being close to, you know, in the slipstream constantly of the car in front is not going to do you any good, and could actually hamper you from making an overtake. Asim, I thought maybe would try and go for a little cheeky move here down into turn 4, but nope, decides he's not interested in the slightest and stays in behind for the time being. But Tony definitely not showing electric pace, especially considering the fact that Dan is still keeping up with them.
Yeah, I've got to give Dan some serious credit, because he is there, he is in the shot, so you can see him just appearing every so often, despite the fact he's on this one stop. This is a really, really good 16-lap stint as it stands so far for the hard tie runner of FRT, Dan. But when is that cliff edge going to fall, and will he be able to defend from the likes of Lucas Gavroche and, of course, his own teammate of Quantum? And Yassir and Lorenz is in P10. How's that happened? With Maxime and then Kevin Zunberg, Leon Olix, and then Paulos, who's just received, by the way, his next 3-second penalty. The man I was hoping that might be on for some points here. Now with a 6-second penalty, I think that final point might be just out of grasp on his debut here tonight for the QRT man, but plenty to learn for the man, remember, who, of course, did not actually qualify because they were banned for this particular event. Oscar is just getting out of the turbulent air of the car in front of him again, just to cool down those engine temperatures. I have a feeling that the next few laps is going to be status quo, as it's going to be a bit of a build-up for what will be a last hurrah and a bit of a finale, if you will, a bit of a crescendo for these front 4 who are looking to play some music tonight.
Yes, as to what instruments it is they're going to be played, we'll have to wait and see. It depends on how clean and how fair they're going to be. And if it's to go anything by lap 1, I think it's definitely going to be more of a drum and bass aspect, but we'll wait and see on that one as, yeah, less than 4.5 laps to go in this one, and yet nothing happening. They're all happy enough to just stay within the DRS of one another. I think the last 3 laps is where it's all potentially going to kick off, but Azim now getting within 3 tenths, now 2 tenths behind Oscar. Is he trying to set himself up for a move here? Could he get a move done here into the stadium section? No, lost a bit of traction there on the exit of 12, and in the end, nothing there opening for him, but he's getting very close, and the traction through this final corner is going to be key. And look at the extra grip that the Alpine has got compared to that Mercedes in front of him. Oscar now will not want to go to the right-hand side. Oh, in fact, he is, because Sergio tried to break the toe a little bit. Is there going to be an opportunity here for a team down into turn 1? But they've all got full batteries near enough going down this pit straight that no one is really close enough to make a move. Oscar now going very late on the brakes, almost hitting Sergio, and nearly opened the door for a seam there to go for it. But that is the first attempt, and I think that's a little bit of pressure applied there from ET8 to try and upset one of the SCI drivers. This time it is Oscar. It's previously been Tony. This time, like I said, it's Oscar. Not really, didn't work out in the end, but it's just showing that one little mistake could cost them. It could cost either team here. But what can Azim do? He's running out of laps with these fresher tyres. 3.5 to go. He's got to make a move now.
Yes, he does have to make a move now, but I think Oscar, if I'm perfectly honest with you, it looked to me that the behaviour of the car, I don't think Oscar was intending to go for the move. I think he went to the inside to potentially defend from Azim, and he was looking behind, and I think he got caught out by the braking zone. So he's lucky that he's actually didn't end up colliding with Sergio as a result. So Azim is definitely getting into the mindset now of Oscar, and we know Sergio is able to do that against Tony, but as it stands, the Icemen themselves are not showing that they're braking too badly at the moment as they start the 34th lap of this Grand Prix. Even Eskrig now with a 3-second time penalty at the back means that the bottom 4 are all with time penalties while this is all happening. Ventaris Thomas, by the way, has pitted for a set of soft tyres and he's in 18th place, so whatever happens, it's going to make literally 0 difference because he's not going to get the fastest lap point unless you're in the top 10. EVE's Lucas has just overtaken FRT's Dan now. Dan really starting to struggle on those blistering hard tyres now, 19 laps old with 2 laps to go. As I said, it with 21 laps at the end of this one. Laurent Seal is now just been overtaken, Yassir, that's the teammates at Aston Martin Hadrick Racing. AMR's Maxime not able to capitalise on that one, so he stays down in P11. Back to the front 4 though, they're maintaining their ground. Lucas very happy with his race pace at the moment, and he only needs a couple of laps to get the 3 seconds he needs against Dan, and actually he's going to be on for a very solid P5 finish. It's all going to be about where Dan finishes. Will he be able to hold that 4-second gap to Gavroche and stay in the hunting for P6? It's been a brilliant effort nonetheless from the FRT man.
I think he can, yeah. I mean, 4 laps is not a massive offset considering the age of their tyres at this particular point. So I think he'll be able to, considering as well the pace that Gavroche is showing. In fact, if anything, Quantum on his 4-lap fresher tyres to him is getting much closer than what Gavroche will be. But to the penultimate lap already, I can't believe we're saying that. This is lap 35 and 36. And once again, nobody is close enough to attempt to make a move here. I mean, Tony is just saving that battery in the right points and just showing how difficult it is to get close to the car in front. I've seen they're getting close to the back of Oscar, but not having the best of runs through the first few corners, and we are still in a single file, and no one is close enough to make a move. I said Tony could win this race. I didn't think it'd be like this. I could eat my words though. We have a lap and a half to go, but he's doing everything he needs to do.
Yes, he's trying to save as much battery as he can. Of course, he can defend going into turn 1 and then, of course, out of turn 3 into turn 4. So it's all going to be about whether Sergio, who's got a full battery, by the way, to deploy at the end of this particular straight, is going to have the opportunity. But he needs to get a lot closer to Tony than that one. The gap is around about half a second. He needs a lot less than that one. He needs about a quarter of a second, I think, if he wants to put any kind of danger, any kind of threat on that SCI man. And you can tell straight away he's trying to push so hard. Out there is Sergio, so much so he's lost the rear, and I tell you what, that might open up an opportunity here for SCI Oscar, because there you can see losing the rear once again. Sergio, I don't think he's going to get anywhere near Tony Richer as a result of that one. That's what happens if you get too greedy on the throttle. You lose the rear, and as a result of that one, I think ETA, I'm going to be perfectly honest with you, have completely bottled any kind of opportunity to look for this race win. As a result, Sergio will get closer but out of the corner, Tony knows he's got the advantage. He just takes the corner very nicely, and he knows that he's got the advantage of half a second going through into turn number 4. No move is going to happen. That's what happens when you get too greedy, and ET8 are going to have to learn from this, because dropping points is not the way that you win championships. Azim, it's critical for ET8 now that he gets that move done on Oscar and at least get a double podium for the Spanish outfit. This has been their Achilles heel this championship. They've won every other championship, but this one they just can't seem to get the hand on, and it's all because of the team represented in Mercedes. They merged from what was known as Team Shizou, and now they're becoming the Shizou Cedar Igniters. They have shown their worth, they've shown their pace, and they've got absolutely no desire whatsoever to lose points to anyone, never mind the team that's looking to put them under pressure. As it stands though, that pressure is not untouched. Tony Reich wins here from Sergio, from Oscar, and then from Azim, from Lucas. What a valiant effort is from him. Dan will hold on, would you believe, all the way to the end for 5th place, and he will get 5th place after the time penalties are applied. What a valiant effort on a one-stop strategy from FRT's Dan. Quantum finishes in 7th from Gavroche. Lawrence still finishing, can you believe it? Lorenz finished in 9th from Kevin Zuberg. Oh my goodness me, towards the end, after all the penalties are applied. IRT's Leon finishes in 10th from Maxime, from Yasia, Kevin Zuberg, and then you've got Ivan Eskrig in P14. And would you believe, on his debut, Paulos has managed to get the point on his debut. He's been wanting this drive. He's been wanting this seat in WOR Legacy. Not bow down, and hats off to you, sir. It's a point for Paulos. Great effort from him. From Thomas Covers, who finishes in 16th. Olex finishes in 17th. And there is Ventauris Thomas. He's tried his hardest to get the fastest lap. It's not even going to matter, because he's not managed to finish in the top 10. So he'll finish in what will be P18 when Leon's position is reapplied. But I tell you what, that is the end of this Grand Prix. The pressure is not going to fall at all for the Scottish outfit. They have won this race, and I think they've extended their lead in this championship once again.
Indeed, they have. 1st and 3rd to 2nd and 4th for ETA. ETA threw everything they could at them. They tried something different. They split the drivers, under first stint, but in the end, strategy paid off for SCI, and that's why they are champions, and that is why they could get the job done. ETA, like I said, gave them a really good effort, gave it as best as they could, but in the end, even with Azim's fresher tyres, they couldn't do anything, and Tony just saved his battery at the right moments, at the right time, and then one mistake there from Sergio just cost him any chance to try and get an overtake done. Nonetheless, it's a great race for both teams into the, for some respects, but ETA will be slightly disappointed that, again, the championship lead has been extended by SI, not by many points, but it's an extension nonetheless.
Yeah, it's an extension nonetheless, and that's what all that will matter for them. There is then the final results of this race. Tony Reich wins from Sergio, from Oscar, from Azim in the top 4. What a great effort it was from FRT down on that one-stop strategy to get the 5th place result. Lucas finishing in 6th from Quantum, Gavroche, Lorenz, and then Maxime. You've got Yasia, Kevin Zunberg, Ivan Eskrig, Paulos managing to get P15 in the end. Of course, remember, you've got Leon, who the glitch means that he ends up being down the order, but he's definitely, obviously, still in the mix. Let's take a quick look at this calendar, because, look, the bottom line is that's the end of the Mexico City Grand Prix. We are now heading onto a treble header here, Bobberts. We're at Austria Reverse next week. It's also a sprint race in the correct direction before we go to the reverse circuit, and then we do that again at the Netherlands, and then we do that again at Britain 3 weeks in a row in what is a bit of a horrific set of tracks heading into the Halloween season. What is the expectation for this one? Reverse circuits.
I'll tell you one thing, whoever decided to do that clearly was thinking of Halloween to try and scare the drivers and the teams into thinking that you're going to do 3 sprints in a row with 3 reverse grids and 3, go in the right direction. It's like I said 2 weeks ago, it's certainly going to be difficult for the drivers, not the least by having to learn both layouts, going, the correct way and the wrong way, as it technically is. But, Austria is a fairly easy track, let's be brutally honest. There's not many corners. You've only got, two heavy braking zones. It should be straightforward. The Netherlands low in Silverstone is a completely different story, especially I think for the Netherlands as well. Actually, come to think of it, with the banking obviously for what initially is turn 3, doing that in reverse. How do you get that done? Then going into what would be the penultimate corner, I don't know. I am not going to try it. Not, I do not want to do that in the slightest. So I feel for the drivers having to do that, but do you know what? It'll just make it even more entertaining for us. And I think at the same time could see a few more incidents or a few more calamities, but we'll have to wait for that come, next week and the subsequent weeks. But tell you what, that'll be fun. That'll be fun to watch if I'm not in the box.
Yeah, it should be fun to watch as well. I'm not sure if Joseph will be back anyway. Actually, I'm going to do a quick Google search to see if he's at least going to be happy, because my man obviously took a trip over to Leicester City to see if how well they did. So is he going to be a happy man, I wonder, actually? Let's have a quick look and see if Leicester City did end up winning. So far, they are 1-0 up against Wrexham, so at least he is a little bit on the happier side here. But we're a lot happier about what has been actually a very good race in the end, wasn't it, at Mexico? For me, that race start was absolutely biblical. It was fantastic. A lap and a half of side-by-side action between the two teams looking to win this title. Absolutely fabulous, Boberts.
It certainly was. But a little bit of a shame that the fact we didn't get that towards the end of the race. I think we were all we're all certainly expecting that, but in the end, it didn't quite happen. But still, it was that lap and a half, between Tony, Sergio, and Asim was immense, and it's what you like to see is drivers going tooth and nail between each other, battling to get those positions. And Oscar was just there to watch it all from in front and looking behind constantly. I wonder what sight he had, as well as the VNT drivers at the beginning of the race. I can't believe I'm saying this. VNT were 5th and 6th at the start of that race. They had the start of all starts they could have asked for, and one driver finishes in P18. How does that happen?
Yeah, it's a bit of a weird one, isn't it, to be fair as well. I've actually just got that race start as well to have a very quick look at what was actually a very, very good Grand Prix, especially right at the start of this one. I was super, super impressed with how all of the drivers sort of compared themselves throughout the start of that race, because they've been super, super with it, weren't they, right at the start. And here's that race restart once again when Oscar was... he got a really good start with Tony Riesch, actually, and they were working with each other quite well. And that race start was so critical, and then Azim looking like he was going to go for it, but then elected not to go for it, so then he could have a bit more of a safety start, if you will. What would it have been if he decided to go for the dive? I think he possibly could have challenged Tony Riesch for P2 immediately out the blocks, but then we wouldn't have been able to see all of this, would we? Going through all of these sets of corners here, side by side through here. They carried on racing. They touched wheels, but they were respectful throughout this part of the circuit. Then here, Tony Riesch wasn't as respectful. He was very happy to shut the door on him, despite the fact that he still had a foot in. And then look at this. Around the outside, they continued to go side by side. Off of the circuit, he'll say that I didn't deserve that being pushed off, so I stayed side by side with both of the drivers. But in the end, electing to get in front Tony Riesch, and then getting the cut back into turn number 11, going into 12, and then around the outside, absolutely fabulous from Azim. There will be questions about whether he was off of the circuit when he completed that overtake, but nonetheless, very tight margins and very well crafted from the two teams at the top of this championship.
It really was, and it just shows the competitiveness and the skill that obviously all of these drivers and these top drivers do perform and bring us week in, week out. And it could have been a different story. There could have been a bit too much contact and somebody could have been sent around, but do you know what, at the end of the day, nobody did, and it was fantastic for us to commentate on and for everybody to see. And even if it did last that whole lap and a half, and that's pretty much all we got, it certainly was worth it. And kudos to all of them for giving us a good spectacle there to watch. And bring it on for the rest of the season is all I'm going to say. If that's what we're going to get, then I'd take that every week.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's certainly going to be one that I'm going to be looking forward to, obviously, throughout the rest of the season, especially with what I expect there to be a little bit of a high attrition sort of situation, I think, here, as well as I've just found out that actually Sheffield Wednesday somehow are 1-1 against Birmingham, by the way, which is a miracle considering the players haven't been paid yet. So, needs must. Fabulous stuff, though. As I said, it should be a high attrition race and one of definitely high drama when we go on the reverse circuit. But of course, it's the sprint races next week as well, Bobbert. So what are the expectations for this one? Because of course, it's 3 sprint races in a row.
Again, it's just going to be this. Just continue the same as if it would for any other normal race weekend or race week. Is, just maximize the points and just keep it clean and but again, just don't take any risks in qualifying. We've seen it again near enough tonight, and yes, Thomas especially just about got away with it, but don't take any chances. You've got to, the qualifying is key, as we know in this game, as it is in near enough every single game, but especially this game compared to most recent ones. Obviously, as we know, with the dirty air aspect, and obviously the slipstream being near enough non-existent if you're in a train. Doesn't matter how far in front you are or how far behind you are, but it'll be interesting to see what like I said, to what these drivers can do, both in the correct format and then doing it in reverse. I'm excited to wait to see that for next week in Austria. I'm sure the drivers are as well, but it's going to be, having to do it both ways on the same night. I can't imagine how they'd be able to cope, but this is why these guys represent these teams, and that's why they're here.
Before we wrap this one up, I do want to just say something very publicly, though, Adam, and I'm pretty sure you know what's coming here. You obviously made your announcement. You made your announcement not too long ago about your retirement as well, and what a career it has been within the Formula One franchise. And I must say, from myself, on behalf of everyone at WOR, as well as I'm sure on behalf of everyone, a big thank you for all of your contributions in the racing sphere on Formula One as well. Back in the old V8 engines, way back when you got started, and then heading over into this generation of car. It's going to be a real pleasure to have you, obviously, alongside us moving forward in the comms box, and I'm sure many opportunities in Legacy Division and other leagues. But a big well done and a big thank you for so many years of racing.
I didn't expect you to say that, so thank you very much for your kind words there, Jota. You can officially call me Martin Brundle, can't you now? I've done my stint in F1. It's now time to go into the comms box on a more permanent basis, obviously. But it was always going to come. I had made it aware, a few months ago that it potentially would be the case, and just this game it's just not for me. I think in terms of it doesn't suit me. So yeah, it's been a fun 13 years on doing league racing here on F1, and it's been the highs and lows of it all. Winning, to have won championships, and the lows on I guess not getting my expectations, but it's been a hell of a journey. It's been a hell of a ride, and obviously everyone that I've raced with throughout my 13 years, it has been a fun one. But it doesn't mean it's, like I said, it's not a final goodbye. I will still be here. I just won't be out in a car on track. But thank you very much, Jota, and thank you to everyone. It's been a pleasure. It's been a hell of a journey.
Yeah, and it's been an absolute pleasure to commentate over the many races that I've had with you, as well as commentating alongside you as well. And I'm obviously looking forward to many more years in the comms box as you take your steering wheel out of your hands and replace it with the microphone. Absolute pleasure, mate, and absolute pleasure to have you all alongside us for what has been a very interesting and a very intense Mexico City Grand Prix. We take a trip over to the Styrian Mountains in Austria for the second sprint race of the season, and of course the first of our treble reverse track headers as we head over to the Styrian Mountains in the wrong direction, would you believe, next week, October 7th. So we'll be tuning in there on Tuesday night at 7:15. From myself, from Adam, and from the rest of the team here at WOR, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Take care. Ta-ra.